Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. And as always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast. Happy, January 23rd, 2025. Hope everybody is having a safe and a much warmer Thursday. If you're here in the Tampa Bay area, is it still raining outside? I mean, my God, when did I wake up and live in Seattle? I mean, this is crazy. The weather's just been awful the last couple of days. You're supposed to have our first game for the Pendingos last night, but unfortunately that did not happen because of the weather. But I hope everybody is staying safe. And if you are traveling, just like be careful out there, man. This is no joke at all. I mean, we're getting freaking snow in northern Florida, which is we're breaking records. Florida breaking records. Yes, and new skateboard in the background. Switched it in the back from the Rays to a gift from my buddy Rob. It says Bridger and Peters. A couple of those were the name of our streets that we grew up on growing up. So a really cool gift from one of my best friends, Rob. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe here. Hit that notifications bell. Subscribe on YouTube. Every single like counts. So please do what you can to help support the pod. We are continuing to do big things here. Shout out to David Terry as well. Hola, hermano. Also, thank you to everybody that joined us yesterday on the Beckles and Recher podcast. It's going to be every Wednesday around 3:30. It's kind of a lot less organized than I got here on the Recher podcast. Every day at noon, as soon as 12 o'clock hits, boom, the music starts and we're ready to roll here. There, it's a lot more laid back at the Dignitary Tea and Kava House. So every Wednesday, I'd say around 3:30, we'll get things going there. And it's a lot more laid back. We can talk a little bit about anything and everything. So another reason why you want to subscribe, because I'll be housing that on my YouTube channel. So when we go live, you definitely want to know. So subscribe there. Great show as always today on the program. 12:15 today from Athlon Sports. We got our guy Luke Easterling, who covers the Bucs and all things NFL. Just released his mock draft today, so you can go check that out. No, not right now. I don't want you to leave. But his mock draft of where the Buccaneers are going to go in the first 3 rounds. It's a 3-round mock draft. Also where he has Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward going as well. So really, really good stuff there from Luke Easterling from Athlon Sports. He joins us at 12:15. At 12:45 today, Greg Wolf. You guys know Greg Wolf, one of the voices of our Tampa Bay area. It's Gasparilla weekend here in Tampa Bay. And if you're not familiar with Gasparilla, he's going to join us and let everybody know what it is all about, what Street Laced marketing has going on. There's so many parties. Again, be safe out there this weekend. 1:30, Ed Encina joins us to talk all things Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know if he's on the road yet. I know he was going to do this road trip, so I don't know exactly where he is. Is he still in Tampa? Is he going to make the drive up or the flight up tomorrow or today? We'll find out. Ed Encina joins us at 1:30. And then at 2 o'clock today, we will be joined by Jake Asman, our guy from the Jake Asman Show, one of the biggest YouTube shows around covering all things Jets. He is on fire. And if you don't or you haven't, make sure you go subscribe to the Jake Asman Show. He is all over it. Any time something happens with the New York Jets, boom, that guy is alive wherever he is. We were at the Barrett Sports Media Conference last year. He left right in the middle. He's like, Jay, I got to go. They just signed Morgan Moses. I got to go to the hotel room right now to a show. I'm like, that's dedication, man. And I've been kind of following in his footsteps, trying to take what he has done and put my own spin on it. So Jake Asman is going to join us today at 2 o'clock, because he knows pretty much everything Jets. So Aaron Glenn, new coach there with the Jets. What does that mean for a guy like Aaron Rodgers? Would a guy like Aaron Glenn, a former player in the NFL, want Aaron Rodgers there as kind of like a safety blanket, and knowing that maybe if things were a little bit different, maybe Aaron Rodgers will play better. Maybe Garrett Wilson would look better, and Devontae Adams. And also, I'll ask Jake the simple question of, all right, You just had Robert Saleh. You already had a young upstart defensive coordinator, first-time head coach. Why is it going to be different this time? And it's ironic because if you look back at some of the things that were said about Robert Saleh, and everybody liked Robert Saleh. Nobody looked at that selection by the Jets and was like, that's not a good pick. Look at that defense with the San Francisco 49ers. The last couple of guys that have been working there as the DC, whether it's D'Amico Ryans or a guy like Robert Saleh, that's what happens. The hot commodities of these teams are the hot commodities for these teams to pick as their next head coach are usually the ascending coordinators on each side of the ball. I mean, look at the guys that are getting hired. You see Ben Johnson for a long time, the offensive not a long time, but a decent amount of time, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and Aaron Glenn, the DC for Detroit. Liam Cohen was a guy that we announced yesterday on the show is staying here in the Tampa Bay area, but would you have been surprised if he left for a head coaching gig somewhere else? No. You're always trying to find that next guy, whether it's on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. So I can't wait to ask Jake that question because, why is it going to be different with Aaron Glenn than Robert Saleh? A big shout out real quick to start the show. Madison Keys upset Iga Swiatek to make it to her first Australian Open final. The 29-year-old American beat, in my mind, the most dominant player there down under in Iga Swiatek. And what a match. And it was like 3:30, I think, or 4 o'clock this morning. So if you're up early, you got a chance to see it. She won 5-7, 6-1, and then 7-6. It was 10-8 in the last set. Insane. She's going to play Aryna Sabalenka, the number 1 seed, on Saturday night for the trophy. So it's like, I think it's early. So it's like early Saturday morning. So it'll probably be like 3:34 in the morning. It's going to be tough to get up. I've done that in the past. I'm a weirdo in that way, man. I'll get up way early. I'll get up at 4 in the morning to watch the Australian Open finals. I've done it before. I did it, I think, the last time Serena won it, because you just never know. 3:30 in the morning on Saturday. 3:30. So if you're feeling frisky, stay up late or get up early. But yeah, support Madison Keys. How great is that? We're seeing so much American representation there down under, which is great, because we don't always see that. In the last couple of years with tennis, we're not really seeing a bunch of American representation, but we do. We did there down under in Melbourne. So shout out to David, Terry, and Dolan, and Sergio. We appreciate you guys. I wanted to get to something real quick, and I know Luke Easterling is going to join us at 12:15. There's a game later on today at 3 o'clock Eastern between this team right here, Manchester United, and Rangers in the Europa League. And I am so ready to get my heart broken again. I'm so ready to be pissed off at like 5 o'clock because of these mother right here. And I just wonder, what teams in sports right now do the fan bases have like the most love-hate relationship with? And I'm not talking about the teams that are just perennially awful, the teams that just suck, the teams that just you're just wallowing in your own misery, and you're wallowing in your own self-pity, and you just can't get out of the basement. I'm talking about teams that show flashes, teams that have regular season success but don't come up big in the playoffs, teams that have outstanding superstars but they're never able to rise to the occasion when it matters most. I think Manchester United is one of the greatest examples of a love-hate relationship, because I'll get up at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday to watch this freaking team, and they'll let me down and lose 1-0 to inferior competition. It drives me crazy, but they're not the only team. So I want to ask you, who do you think is that one team that hasn't won in the last decade and their fan base has the greatest love-hate relationship with? And I'm going to give you a couple examples. The Dallas Cowboys, to me, I think is probably number 1 on this list. There are so many proud Dallas Cowboys fans out there that swear that this is their year. Every single year, they're America's team. I mean, you look at the first 3 years with Mike McCarthy at the helm. I mean, 12 wins, not too bad, right? But they continuously let you down in the playoffs. They haven't won since the 90s. I think the Chicago Bears are probably another one of those teams. Now, it's a little bit different with them because I know they did have the number 1 pick, but also because they got Caleb Williams. So people were so excited this year. This is going to be their year. Justin Fields was supposed to be that guy. And you see a lot of Chicago Bears fans that for the last couple of years, yeah, this might be our year, but by the end of the season, they're just wallowing in their own misery as well. Is there any other NFL teams? Am I leaving anybody out? Because I think there probably is a couple more. When you go to the NHL, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are that answer. They haven't won a cup in decades, but every single year, people think that this is their year. They're the Dallas Cowboys of the National Hockey League. They have Austin Matthews. They have Mitch Marner. They have John Tavares. They have Nylander. They have all these great players, but they always come up short. The New York Rangers are another one. President's Trophy winning team. Igor Shesterkin, Artemi Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, world's most famous arena. They haven't won since 1994. There's a love-hate relationship there. Let's go to baseball. I think when you look at baseball, I think that the Tampa Bay Rays may be one of those teams. You love them because they're the little engine that could. They're going up against these other high payroll teams. But because they don't spend a lot of money, because they get rid of their players, because of their owner, I think there's a love-hate relationship there. So you see there's layers to this. It's not the same reason for everybody. I mean, you look at the New York Mets, I think they're on this list too. You have all of these high-priced players. You have Steve Cohen as your owner. Now you go get Juan Soto. But not counting last year because they did make it to the NLCS, but this is a team that struggled to even make the playoffs altogether. In the NBA, we'll go with the New York Knicks. You think they're good, you think they're back, but they're not better than the Celtics. Are they better than the Cavs? They're not better than the Thunder. But they have Jalen Brunson, they have Karl Anthony Towns, they had Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire, Tyson Chandler, Jason Kidd a couple of years ago. This team hasn't won since the 70s. There's certainly a love-hate relationship there. And I think the Philadelphia 76ers are on that list as well because you have Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, and you had Allen Iverson. I mean, this team hasn't won in decades either. So you love these teams. I'll even go to college football. Let's go to Penn State, right? Because I think you might have been able to put a team like Michigan there, but they won last year. Penn State is probably another one of those teams. Hasn't won in a while. James Franklin gets close every year, but never able to get over the hump. And because they haven't won since 2008, and because of their situation with their coach, I think the Florida Gators are on that list now. They're on that list because you look at it when it comes to the love-hate relationship with Florida. This year, going into the season, there was not a lot of belief in a guy like Billy Napier. And then as the season started and they're losing these games, everybody's like, all right, well, at least the silver lining, the saving grace for this season is that if you lose enough games, Billy will be gone and you'll go get another coach. Well, no, that's not what happened. He comes back. The defensive line plays better. DJ Lagway is here. They beat Ole Miss. He's not going anywhere. He's definitely coaching next year. But as my guy Zach Blobner told us a couple of weeks ago, there still is like that uneasy pit in your stomach going, yeah, I guess he's still here, but that doesn't make it any easier because you probably don't think that he's the guy for the long term. I'll ask you, who is that love-hate relationship team right now? We'll go to David Terry. Bruins, okay. They haven't won since Chara and Bergeron and those guys. That could be another one. The Yankees haven't won since 2009. That's a good one as well. Troy Roth, the Minnesota Vikings, letting me down for 50 years plus. Yeah, I think right in there, right? Minnesota, especially the last couple of years when they've had unbelievable regular seasons. A couple of years ago, they lost to the Giants at home to Daniel Jones and Brian Dable. That still doesn't even seem real to even say that. And then this year, losing again in the first round to the Rams. David Terry agrees with me talking about the Maple Leafs. Anybody else? Oh, my God, Kemper checking in from the West Coast. I love to hate the Tampa Blazers. Great team, but too many Knopf singers. It's an inside joke. That was our local men's baseball team. We were undefeated, 9-0-1 if you need them. Mike Frimter, the Lakers. They always blow it, and their fans think they'll win every year. To be fair, though, to the Lakers, they did win that bubble championship in 2020. But, yeah, there's got to be a little bit of – see, that's where I don't know if it's love-hate. That may be a little bit more of – a bandwagon thing and, a LeBron thing. I don't know if it's necessarily love-hate. Troy says the Miami Hurricanes. Okay, I'll give you that one. Luke, who's going to join us in a second, lifelong Timberwolves fan here. We'll get to that here in a minute. And then shout out to Jude and everybody tuning in here on the J Recher podcast. Again, follow me on all social media platforms. These are the kind of conversations that we're going to have. We're going to put these videos out. We're going to splice them up, cut them up, put them out on social media to continue the conversation. I love that type of thing, that back and forth where, yeah, we love talking Tampa sports, but we also want to expand it and talk about the other sports around the continent. I don't like to leave out Canada. I got some love for them too. All right, let's bring him in. Lifelong Timberwolves fan. the one and only Luke Easterling from Athlon Sports. What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm doing great, my man. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm better than the Timberwolves. I was watching that last night on Inside the NBA, and me growing up being a diehard Knicks fan. In that trade, I was like, hey, it sucks to lose Julius Randle, Karl Anthony Towns. I wasn't sold because I thought, all right, is he tough? Is he going to be able to handle it? He's been fantastic for the Knicks, but the whole Julius Randle experiment hasn't worked out too good for you guys, huh?
We didn't understand it then. Like, even the trade, like, back then. Like, it's not like we didn't think that Towns might be moved at some point, but it just felt like weird and out of nowhere. And the haul that we got, like, we didn't understand the fit with Randall coming back. Like, it just didn't make sense. So, but, the entire existence of a Timberwolves fan doesn't make sense either. So here we are.
I actually had a Timberwolves jersey back in the day because of Wally Zerbiak, fellow Long Islander. Love that guy. Went to Cold Spring Harbor. Big Wally Zerbiak guy. So I had, ironically enough, as a kid that grew up in Long Island when I was probably 11, 12 years old, a Wally Zerbiak jersey. So still got love for the T-Wolves there, and those Kevin Garnett years were obviously incredible. All right, Luke, let's get into it. The big news yesterday, Liam Cohen staying with the Buccaneers, not going to Jacksonville. And I've asked this question to a couple of people. Is it more because he was happy and comfortable here in Tampa Bay, or like how much of it was that and how much of it was he was looking at, Trent Baalke, who now we know is not there. Trent Baalke, Jacksonville. Like how much of it had to do with where he was going to go and where he was at?
I think it's never just one thing, or maybe never, maybe not never, but I think it works together. I think both of those things play off of one another. I think the fact that he and his family are so happy in the Tampa Bay area and see the stability of the franchise, the culture that is there, the way they were able to be successful in year one, and how much looking ahead to year two, you can already see. I mean, there's a damn good chance that entire starting offense is back. And when you look at guys like Bucky Irving, you look at guys like Jalen McMillan and Graham Barton, guys that are going to be going into their second years and don't have to spend that first however long through the offseason and training camp and doing all those installs, they can pick up where they left off and be even better, which is kind of scary for as well as they played this year as rookies. All of those things combine, and then you look at the other option, which is Jacksonville. Do they have that culture? Absolutely not. Do they have that organizational stability? Absolutely not. Do they have some talent on the offensive side of the ball? Sure. But they don't have it in terms of the confidence that you would have in it, right? You got a star quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, but you're paying him a lot of money, hell of a lot more than Baker Mayfield's getting paid right now. And you have, some talent at running back, but inconsistency. You have some talent at wide receiver, but inconsistency and injury issues. The offensive line is really questionable across the board. And so you start to, if you make a pros and cons column, even just from a football side of things, both in terms of off the field and on the field, it just doesn't match up at all. And so when you take that side of it, and Trent Baalke is his own subject, right? I mean, now that he's out of the picture, I think that clears the way for a lot of things for Jacksonville. But at the time that decision was made, that was absolutely a part of it. And that's nothing new in Jacksonville. Jags fans have been, crying for that for years. I'm never going to be the, hey, this person needs to lose his job kind of guy. That's not something I feel comfortable doing in any sense. But you can't ignore the fact that these top coaching candidates, that happened a couple of years ago when they ended up with Doug Peterson, the top candidates want to go to Jacksonville because there are good things about that place, and Trevor Lawrence is at the top of the list. But when you have to consider all those other things and they want to hand you a general manager whose history is questionable at best, that's why they kept getting turned down. So it's a little bit of everything, but I do think at the end of the day, the thing that tipped the scales for Liam Cohen, based on what I know, is just the fact that their family loves Tampa Bay, and they've found a community and a home there that they really, really love. And they weren't ready to leave it. Definitely not just for the first head coaching opportunity that came along. And if you look, he hadn't interviewed anywhere else, hadn't had any requests. So if that was the only team that was going to offer him a job, I think he's looking at Ben Johnson, who left Detroit after last year being like, oh, he's the hot name. He decided to stay and see what else was out there. Now, a year later, he's the Bears head coach. He's got Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, all that stuff he's working with now. Obviously, Buck fans are hoping that doesn't happen with Liam Cohen next year, but we got at least one more year to enjoy his offense, looks like.
Yeah, what do you make of the whole Trent Baalke thing? Because listen, as far as I know, and talking to some of the people that I know in Jacksonville, like Shah Khan's a great guy, and what do you need? What do you need? We'll write you a check, and he doesn't try to micromanage. obviously he's misplayed his hand when it came to Trent Baalke. He's trying to show the guy some loyalty and show them, but I think even Shad kind of looked at it as like, man, like the one consistent thing with this entire equation is that people don't want to work with my GM, and good on him for kind of realizing that a change had to be made. But that's also, some people are going to look at that and go, why did it take so long, right? Why did it take so long to get rid of Trent Baalke? So what happens to the general manager position? Do you think that's something that needs to be taken care of before the head coaching? Because we know Patrick Graham and Robert Saleh are two names that have been linked with that job. Like, where does Jacksonville go from here?
Yeah, I think, in terms of Baalke, I think that part is obvious. I do think that there was just a loyalty that Shad Khan felt to him for whatever reason. And these businesses are all relationship businesses, right? Sometimes if you have a guy that's your guy, you don't want to let him go, even if the evidence on the professional side of things continues to build, and you just don't want to make that move. That's your guy. Maybe you're friends. Maybe you feel loyal to that guy for whatever reason. And I think that just reached a tipping point for him. I think that another coaching cycle where you had Ben Johnson, who I think was heavily interested in that job, Liam Cohen, who I think would have been as well. And when both those guys turn you down, you have to look at that part of it and say, hey, man, we're going to still be friends, or we're going to still stay tight, but, for the health of this franchise, it's clear that something isn't right. And, they're also, they're not stupid. Social media speaks loudly these days, and whether it should or not, it's not hard for ownership, for GMs, for any of these teams in any professional sport to get the pulse of the fan base, right? It's not hard to know how they feel about certain things. And I think the Jags fans have made their feelings on Trent Baalke known for years now. And so I do think it did just reach a point where he couldn't ignore the fact that was the elephant in the room. That was such a huge factor in all these head coaching candidates just not wanting to go on board with that and to have him as their GM. That being the case, as they look ahead, I do wonder how they're going to order things, right? Because if your concern was we can't hire the head coach we want because we don't have a GM they want to work with, that makes me think that maybe he'll do it the other way around, where he'll, if Shad Khan identifies, and whoever he uses in the front office that's still there to, make those decisions, I think that they'll want to identify the head coach they want first, and then deal with the GM part once they've got that part. Usually you want to do it the other way around, but I think the way things have gone for them, I think it wouldn't surprise me if they're like, hey, let's just identify the head coach we want. Make sure we get that guy in the building to handle the on-field stuff with the roster we already have. Because like I said, there is talent on that roster. And then afterwards we can deal with the longer term, franchise building part of it and find the right GM to marry with this coach's scheme. We know about that in Tampa, right? How locked in Jason Light has been, both with Bruce Arians and now, Todd Bowles, in terms of drafting and developing and scouting talent that fits their scheme. And I think that's why they've been successful. The Jags will want to do that type of thing with the way they structure that relationship between the GM and the head coach as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Jason Light. Everybody was rejoicing because Liam Cohen saying that he was going to stay here, but unfortunately for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their fans, it looks like John Spytek is going to be headed out to Las Vegas to work with Tom Brady and the Raiders. And I saw you making some comments on social media yesterday as well about the impact that he's had with this team. And he's been an intern, he's been a director of player personnel, head of scouting. Like, he's done so many different jobs in the last 20 years in the National Football League, a very widely respected guy. And now he's going to get his opportunity. What did you make of that news when it came out yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing on one hand, right? But this is the price of success. This is the front office version of what just happened to the Lions, right? The price of having an elite offensive coordinator and elite defensive coordinator is that other teams are going to poach them and give them head coaching jobs. And that's the price of being successful at developing these people. So on one hand, it speaks to, again, the culture, what Jason Light has built in that front office. But unfortunately, you can't hoard all the best talent in the league forever, and it's not even really right to do so. I know there are some franchises that feel that way, that they'll block interviews and they'll block certain things, at least before there were rules in place to try to prevent that. But I think it's very bittersweet for Jason Light, as it is for Bucs fans. But he's got to be so proud. He's got to be so excited for his guy, because again, anybody who's been around that building, who knows John in any type of way, knows that he absolutely deserves this and has for a long time. The fact that I love how much Jason has always talked about delegation and putting people in positions to do what they do well, something he had to learn from his early years as the GM that he'll admit to. He wasn't the best at that at the beginning, but learned how to make sure he built a strong staff, gave them, their runway to go do what they do well. And I think Spytek's development is a prime example of that. But no, man, I mean, you've seen his day 2 and day 3 press conferences. You've seen, the when he has spoken to us, you can just tell that he gets it. It's one thing to be able to identify talent. It's one thing to be able to, gauge whether or not players are going to be a good fit for your locker room and the culture and the type of, that's not an easy thing. This is a human business. It's not an easy thing to understand. Hey, I'm watching this guy's film, and now I'm interviewing him in a sterile, hotel room in Indy, and, I'm watching him run a 40, or I'm, meeting with him for 30 seconds at the Senior Bowl to get his phone number. It's hard to determine in those interactions whether or not, as the Bucs would say, this is a Buccaneer man, right? This is the I am that man, that Levante David, type of archetype. But I think John Spytek was just so good at it, man. I mean, and the way he communicated that to us in those press conferences, in some of those interviews that he did, and with the team and the digital content that they put out. I mean, you could just tell his ability to translate what type of player makes this team great and find all of those guys, and his ability to communicate it to us, to say, hey, this is what we saw in this guy. This is where we think he'll fit. This is what we think he does well. And I mean, the last few draft classes, I mean, look, over the last 5 years, the Bucs have won a Super Bowl and then 4 straight division titles. That's not an accident. It's a great team sport because it takes everybody, but John Spytek was instrumental in that aspect of it, developing talent that you knew was going to fit, and then handing it to the coaching staff and say, do the rest. So again, I'm really happy for John, but man, it's going to suck to see him elsewhere.
You got that right. And I think you bring up a good point. Good general managers, good directors of personnel find good players. I think the best find good people. It's not just about fitting in the scheme on the field every Sunday. It's about the guy that fits into your locker room, the guy that's not going to go AWOL when things don't go well, the guy that's going to pick up his teammates. Of course, you got to have talent and you got to produce. I understand that aspect of it. But you could tell to a man, 2 years in a row, this team goes and hits the skids in the middle of the season. Nobody jumps ship, right? And yeah, a lot of that has to do with the leadership with Light and Bowles, and it could trickling down to Golston, Levante, and Mike Evans. But it's also the young guys, man. It's also the guys that they bring in, realizing like, hey, we can't be a discontent. We can't be a malcontent in here. We can't just start going into business for ourselves, wrestling term. But that's just the way. That's the way that they've done it. They've established that culture. And I think culture can be an overblown term when you're talking about sports, but I think in football, because you have so many different personalities, it is huge that everybody is on the same page. You mentioned Levante David. Happy 35th birthday to the one and only Levante David, number 54. It's funny with you joining the show today. You're my brother's favorite guy when it comes to mock drafts. He said something to me. He's picked out 2 people over the years that he's really liked. Trevor Sikkema being one of them, and we know Trevor has been able to kind of climb the ladder and do some great things after being here in Tampa with Pewter Report and then the Draft Network and now Pro Football Focus. And then he's like, I really like this guy Luke Easterling's mock drafts. And I was like, and he knows I don't like mock drafts. I'm not usually like I don't read a ton of them, but I was like, you know what? Luke's actually one of my favorite mock draft guys too. This is like a couple years ago. It was so funny. So when you told me yesterday that you were coming out with a mock draft today, I was like, all right, good. Because what I like what you do is you don't fall into the same like lazy narrative. And I can tell that you do your homework, because there's certain franchises that clearly aren't going over certain guys. And then you'll watch some of these mock drafts like, are these guys paying attention like to what these teams put out? And you clearly do. And we'll get to the Bucs draft picks in a second, but I am just enamored with what is going to happen with the first 5 picks this year, because it's all right. Well, is it going to be 1-2 quarterback? Is there going to be a little bit of a wait and go like, let's take best player available? The Tennessee still has Will Levis there, but it doesn't seem like they're sold on him. Do they move out of that draft pick? You actually had Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders not going 1 and 2. I've seen that with other places. What gives you the impression that the first quarterback off the board, if there is no trades, will be the Giants at number 3 and possibly Shedeur to Las Vegas? And yes, I'm giving everybody Athlon Sports. Go check him out at Luke Easterling. Go check him out because he's got everything on there. So you can check out the entire mock draft, but to give you a little peek behind the curtain there. But what gives you the impression that those top 2 teams won't go for a quarterback this year?
Well, I got to say first, you mentioned my guy, Trevor Sikkema. It's so funny. About 10 years ago when I got my job at USA Today, when they pegged me to run Draft Wire and try to build that up. The first person I called was Trevor Sikkema back then. He was doing his own site called With the First Pick, or Road to Radio City. That's what it was called. He had his own blog, Road to Radio City. And I called him up and I was like, hey man, I'm going to start building this thing up. I need you with me. And that was the first guy I brought on to do that.
Great.
And so, yeah, to see him on NFL Network and PFF and all the stuff he's doing is so great. He deserves all of it, man. What a talented dude. What a great human being. To be in the same sentence with that guy, I'll take that all day long. It's fine by me.
Awesome.
But no, in terms of this draft, man, I think it's just, we make fun of the NFL all the time for overdrafting quarterbacks. Okay, it's tale as old as time, right? It happens all the time. But there's also been moments in recent draft classes where I do think the league has swung the pendulum the other way and said, you know what? No, we're not doing that. We're not going to get
Kenny Pickett year.
The Kenny Pickett year is the prime example.
Malik Willis, everybody was like, oh, he's going to be a first-round pick. And it was like, then draft day came, it was like, no, he's not. He's not.
I'm telling you, man, I think that was a huge mile marker in the whole league's development of saying, you know what? When it's not there, we're not going to do that. We're not going to keep doing that. And again, there's 32 teams, 32 owners, 32 GMs. It only takes one, which is why Kenny Pickett goes 20, but the other guys don't come off the board till the third. I think that was a huge moment. I don't think this class is quite that bad, but I do think it's the kind of class where if you're Tennessee and Cleveland at 1 and 2, and yes, you need a quarterback. Their situations are very different, right, in terms of the financials with the Deshaun Watson situation and with Will Levis. Will Levis is on a rookie contract for at least another couple of years. Deshaun Watson, no matter what you do, you're stuck with that for at least another few years. But if you want the on-field product to be better, you better get somebody else in the meantime. So for them, it's a matter of, to me, there are two, I hate the word generational talents because I think it's so overused and doesn't mean anything anymore. I think Travis Hunter is genuinely a generational talent. But the interesting thing to me with him is his generationalness is the fact that he can play two positions at a really high level. If you make him two players, I don't think he's a terribly generational wide receiver, and I don't think he's a terribly generational cornerback. I think he's a really good both of those things.
Right.
So if you're going to play him at one of those positions and not have him play full-time at the other, which again, I'll just be shocked if he's able to do that at the NFL level, is he actually a generational prospect if he's not that type of guy at one of those positions? I think that's the interesting conversation you have to have if you're going to take him at one, which the Titans might do. But Abdul Carter, to me, is the other guy that I just can't see myself taking Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders over that guy. In terms of an elite talent at a premium position, a guy that gets after the quarterback, an incredible athlete, explosive, physical. I mean, he basically played on one arm through the college football playoff and was still the best player on the field with some really talented players, even in this draft class. So for me, if I'm Cleveland and Tennessee, I know I need a quarterback, but I also know that there's just no way I can live with myself if I reach for one of those quarterbacks and pass up a guy in Travis Hunter, who, again, I think is a rare talent in his versatility, but at the very least is going to be a very, very good wide receiver or corner, both premium positions in today's NFL as well. And then a guy who just gets after the quarterback as well as anybody. I don't know. To take a borderline first-round grade for me, which is what both of those quarterbacks have right now, at 1 or 2 over those really, really, truly elite prospects in this draft, I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying this early in the process, it makes me cringe to think that they would. So I'm gonna try to help them out in the mock drafts as much as I can and make them make the smart picks.
There you go, buddy. Yeah, I'm with you. And I know I'm in the minority saying this. I think Travis Hunter as a prospect just terrifies me because of that, what you just said. Like when you look at somebody, and I made this comment a couple months ago, Travis Hunter is like Shohei Ohtani. Right, guys that are doing things that we've never seen or haven't seen in many years, decades, a century. But even when Ohtani gets Tommy John and can't pitch, he's still dropping 40 bombs and stealing 50 bases, right? Like there's no doubt in your mind that he's one of, if not the best designated hitter in the game. Like he's a force. But with Travis Hunter, is it more of the overall package and being able to do something that we haven't seen? And we know there's a jump between the collegiate and the pro level. Is he going to be able to do it in the NFL? We don't know. And that uncertainty would terrify me picking him because, all right, let's say you do pick him and he's just a receiver. Okay. I mean, looking at the guys that we saw, is he better than the guys this year? Is he better than the guys that we just saw this past year? Like, just purely as a wide receiver prospect, is he better than Malik Neighbors? Is he better than Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is he better than we saw Brian Thomas? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. But that would terrify me. All right, if he's just a corner, all right, are you going to draft a corner at number 2? Right? Like, then you take out of the prime position where we've seen in the past, pass rusher, left tackle, quarterback. Like, you don't see that many of those other positions unless they're, way the hell up there. I'm petrified. I would stay away from Travis Hunter because the uncertainty. I'm with you with Abdul Carter. Just watching that guy, and you can tell like there was times where his arm was like not 100% functional, and he's like leaning. He's doing like the shoulder lean. I'm like, dude, I'm drafting that guy. It was. Give me all of that. Give me the Shedeur Sanders versus the Cam Ward. You had Cam going to the Giants, you had Shedeur going to the Raiders. Is it more of a fit thing, or do you think that Cam is just a slight edge above a guy like Shedeur? Because for me, I like Cam. I think at times he tries to make just that play where he just does a little bit too much in terms of football over Shedeur. He's accurate as hell, and I think the thing that people knock him at is that he's Deion's son. Just like he's a fairly accurate passer. He's kind of the last of a dying breed, more of a pocket guy, not going to really get outside and run for 80 yards like we see from some of these other guys. Why those two guys in those spots?
Yeah, I mean, they're real tight for me in terms of grades. They're really 1A and 1B, and I think the thing that might separate them in either direction, I do think where they land is going to be a fit thing, and that's really hard to do in mock drafts because you're just not going to be in those rooms, right? You're not going to be having those conversations. Can I do the national pundit thing and say, oh, the Giants will pass on him because they don't want to deal with Deion? I could do that if I want to, but I hate playing that game because I don't know. I'm not,
right.
For all we know, the Mara family might be thrilled to bring in that attention and that angle of it. You're in New York already. You can't be scared of that, right? You can't shy away from that stuff. So for all we know, that might not be a problem at all. I think I look at potential. I look at upside. That's the terms we use, but what is the best possible, scenario for this guy's ceiling at the next level? And that being the case, I think Cam just has a slightly higher one because I think he's got a little bit of a stronger arm. And I do think he's more comfortable and more effective making things happen outside of the play structure. Not that Shedeur can't do it half of the time by necessity, because his offensive line, at least 2 years ago, was really, really bad. And so it's not that he can't make things happen. I think Cam's a little bit of a better athlete. I think the variance in his throwing, patterns are a little bit wider. You have some really high highs and some really low lows. Doug Farrar, good friend of mine who works with me at Athlon Sports, said he's got some great Jameis and bad Jameis to him.
Oh, we know all about that here.
You know what I mean? Where you just like these ridiculous, crazy, the Chicago Bears play to Mike Evans where he's running all over the place and chucks it 50 yards down the field. But he's also got some of that. How in the world did you make that decision and make that throw? So I think that there's a little more boom or bust maybe with Cam. I just think, my rule when I'm taking quarterbacks high is if I pick the wrong guy, I'm getting fired anyway. And if I pick the higher floor, lower ceiling guy, it's just as likely that he's going to be decent but not good enough to keep me from getting fired as I am going to get fired because I took the high ceiling guy and he busted. So to me, and Lamar Jackson was a huge litmus test for that rule for me, right? Where I was just like, you know what, this quarterback class, which had a lot of first rounders in 2018, I saw flaws in everybody and nobody with the ceiling that I thought Lamar had. Obviously, Josh Allen proving to have that as well. But I put my eggs in the Lamar Jackson basket back then, and I said, this is the guy that I think, if I'm going to swing on a quarterback in the first round, give me the guy that I think can be a superstar. I think Cam Ward has a little bit more of that than Shedeur does. I think Jalen Milroe has a lot of that, but I think his variance is even wider. I think his floor is way lower, and I think his ceiling might even be a little higher. So he I think is the real wild card in that group. I think he's going to be the most intriguing one to watch. But in terms of the team fits, I don't know, man. It's really splitting hairs at this point. I think that's what gave me the nod for Cam Ward. But if you flipped him, I really wouldn't argue.
Yeah, Luke, you definitely have the best pin tweet of all time, thinking that Lamar should go 1. That's one of the best pin tweets on Twitter. You had Lamar number 1 overall before everybody. There was people out there when you were tweeting that saying that the dude should be a freaking wide receiver. Yeah, that really went over like
I tried, man. I got to play my hits. I Lord knows I have plenty of freezing cold takes.
We all do.
We got to take the slam dunks when we get them.
Before I let you go, let us know about these Buccaneers picks, man. You have 3, it's your 3-round mock draft there on Athlon Sports, again, at Luke Easterling. And I like it, man. Yeah, James Pierce Jr. for the Buccaneers with their number 1 pick or their first round pick, the edge from Tennessee. You had Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker from UCLA. What a great story, from walk-on to first team All-American. And then you have Quincy Riley, the Louisville corner at 6 feet tall. That is a guy that, I know I saw some things and watching some of his tape. Maybe he doesn't stick his nose in there and tackle maybe like a Todd Bowles corner, but you got to switch it up a little bit, right? Like, I think that's the one draft pick I look at and I go, maybe they do go in a little bit of a different direction. He's still got some size, but they need a little bit of a ball hawking mentality. So take us through those 3 picks if you could.
Yeah, I think at the first, and this is where I get to cheat a little bit, because obviously I know more about that organization and the structure than I do every other team. I really work hard to learn as much as I can about every other team, but it's never going to come close to what I know about what happens in that building. So James Pierce, the pro comparison that I keep getting from everybody I trust is Brian Burns with him. And so that piques my interest, right? When you look at a guy who's tall, he's long, he's extremely explosive off the ball, kind of inconsistent, especially as a run defender. So he's not a complete player, but dang, man, like the Bucs just need somebody who can get after the quarterback. Yeah. Like, let's figure out the rest later. They can stop the run. They have edge guys that are pretty good. They need a guy who can take over a game. And so if you have to take a little bit of a risk on a guy who's a little more inconsistent, that's what your coaches are for. That's what your position coaches are for. Bring in young guys with talent. Let me fix your technique. Let me make you a more well-rounded NFL professional. I can't teach you that explosiveness. I can't teach you that just knack for getting to the quarterback and wrecking games by yourself. I think James Pierce brings that, and I think the coaching staff can figure out the rest. So if you're telling me I could get Brian Burns 2.0 and fill that edge need for the Bucs, that's fine by me. Schlesinger, like you said, great story, great, walk on and everything, but he's a little undersized. He's not like the huge old school linebacker, but so was Levante David when he came out of Nebraska. And obviously I'm not going to compare anybody to a future Hall of Famer, in my opinion, but Schlesinger is just a guy that again, if you look at the way this team values certain traits, both physical and in terms of locker room and leadership and effort and those types of things, Carson Schlesinger just checks all of those boxes, man. And when you look at a linebacker position that, especially if Levante is not back next year, I think that could go either way still at this point. But even if he is, that second inside linebacker spot has just been a huge problem against the run, against the pass. Like, they just haven't found a guy, to really fill that role. And so they need to invest, I think, a high pick in that position. I think Schlesinger would be a great fit. You mentioned Quincy Riley, and I agree. He'd be a little bit of a deviation from what they normally go to, but I think it's time. I think we could very easily see Jamel Dean be Carlton Davis this year, where he's got a high cap number, but very little guaranteed money. I think they move on from him at some point this offseason, whether it's for a draft pick or something to save that cap space, and because he just can't stay healthy. I love Jamel Dean as a person, and when he's healthy, he can be an impact player. He just can't stay healthy, and he is inconsistent. And again, there's a lot of cap space to be saved there for a team that could use as much as they can without having to restructure contracts. So I think maybe they do go in another direction. He's not as big, he's not as long, maybe not as physical, but he's versatile. He can play outside, he can play inside. And again, this team, like I said about the edge position, they've got some decent players. They need to take the freaking ball away. They have got to make splash plays on defense, or you cannot win football games. And that is what killed them against Washington. They were on the field all day long because you can't take the ball away. You can't set up short fields. The Bucs ran 42, 45 snaps on offense in that game because they're never on the field. You've got to take the football away from the other team, and they need more people, particularly in the secondary, who that's their trump card. That's their top trait that sets them apart, the ability to create those takeaways. And I think Riley would be the fit there.
Yeah, it's a great point because I think I spent more time on the field after the game than Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense during the game. Luke Easterling, Athlon Sports. Go check him out at Luke Easterling, my favorite mock draft guy around. Luke, this has been a lot of fun, man. Let's do it again soon. Enjoy the rest of your week, my brother.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Wow, a wealth of knowledge there. Luke Easterling covering the Buccaneers, covering all things NFL. Those mock drafts are on point. Yeah, it'd be great, David Terry. Yeah, let's need Abdul. Yeah, it'd be great, Kit Carter, for sure. All right, a lot going on in the Tampa Bay area this weekend because it is Gasparilla. So let's bring in a guy that knows all things Tampa Bay, and it is Greg Wolf, one of the voices of the Bay Area. Are you there, my friend? Oh, he was just watching for like 5 minutes. Let me bring him out, bring him back in. Gregorius. There we go. You're here. What's
bad area.
You're in a bad area.
Can you hear me all right? Because we're driving. So we're in a bad area. So I just want to make sure you got me, brother.
You're in a bad area? We're like in a bad area of Tampa? You're in a bad area of Tampa?
No, like not like no. Like I'm out in the sticks, in the Brandon Valrico area, and with the weather or whatever where we're at, the reception's not so great out here in the cut.
In the cut. So yeah, man, big weekend here. Gasparilla. It's funny, I talked to you before. Street Laced, and of course, you guys know Greg, the voice of USF and the Lightning, a big part of Street Laced marketing, Street Laced DJs. He's got the jacket on there. And when I asked you, I was like, hey, what do you guys got going on for Gasparilla? You're like, yeah, we got like 20 events going on. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
yeah,
Gasparilla, for people that are watching that don't like pay attention to Tampa Gasparilla, like it's another level here.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the premier event in the Southeast United States. I mean, obviously, with Mardi Gras in New Orleans, that's probably the only comparable event to Gasparilla as far as crowd size, and literally the whole city shuts down for this event. It's literally 500,000 strong out there along Bayshore Boulevard and through downtown Tampa, where the Pirates invade. They obviously got the key to the city from Jane Pastor this week, and the big pirate festivities kick off Saturday morning. It always starts with the invasion brunch, which takes place at the convention center, where it's a fantastic brunch, and that's where you can watch the flotilla arrive in downtown, and that's where the mayor kind of officially turns things over before all the pirates head down and get on the floats and ride through Bayshore Boulevard in downtown. So with that being said, that is really where you will start to find the entire Street Laced DJs crew. We literally have over 20 different events that our crew will be out at, multiple floats that will be on. I'll be actually hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning float. Yes, sir, with DJ Matt Dodge and the Bolts Blue crew. I think we've got some of the crew from Sticks of Fire who will be on the float with us. So that'll be a lot of fun. So look for us. If you're out in the parade, look for us on the Lightning float. We've got one of our DJs, Sean Renee. He's actually on the Tampa Pig Jig float. We've got DJ Jake De La Cruz. He will be on the On Bikes float. We've got DJ Crystalline Gold. She will be at the Bar and Bar Hospitality tent. We've got DJ Eakin, who will be Eakin's over at McDitton's. They do a Kegs and Eggs party to kind of kick off the festivity before he moves over to the Treasure Cove, which is a new party area powered by Pepin, right there by the Convention Center Bridge, just directly across the street from Publix. So the Treasure Cove is where Eakin will be. He's on double duty. The Florida Aquarium actually has a Gasparilla cruise that goes out into the middle of the flotilla and all of that. And we've got DJ Ali V, who'll be mixing live on the Gasparilla cruise. We've got our boy Speedy Jr., who's representing Gatsby Sabado for the Hispanic and Latin community. He'll be at Vizcaya in Soho. We've got DJ AR Smooth, who's at the Retreat in downtown Tampa. We've got DJ Sandman and The Magician, who are both back-to-back at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. Obviously, we know the Hard Rock powers the entire pirate invasion, so the big after party, if you will be at the Hard Rock at the L Bar. We'll be at the Dallas Bull. We'll be at Centro Ybor Cantina. So literally wherever you're going to be on Saturday, you're going to hear the tunes of a Street Laced DJ, guaranteed, brother.
My goodness. Check this out. This note from our guy, The Stash. The two hardest working men in all of Tampa Bay. Wolf is always rocking the best fit. Greg is to hats as Jay is to shoes. Not bad, buddy. That's not bad.
Oh, I think we got locked up again.
You good?
Oh boy.
I got you. You're good. You might have lost us, but we didn't lose you. So hopefully we can get
cool.
back. Again.
No, we're good.
Did you hear that comment?
I did. I heard something about the fit, and then it cut.
It said from our guy, The Stash, the two hardest working men in all of Tampa Bay. Wolf is always rocking the best fit. Greg is to hats as Jay is to shoes.
That's facts. You got the shoes on lock. I definitely have the hats and the gear. That's a great comparison there. Thank you, Shooter and the Stash. Love those guys. They're awesome.
Hell yeah.
Are you
going to the sneaker soiree?
I do not know.
Okay.
Because again, my schedule is getting out of control now. I feel like
crazy.
Yeah, like now with the Sun season starting up again here in a couple weeks, I actually have to hop on a Tampa Bay Sun conference call here in a few minutes. And you know, the block party stuff. We got the block party live show coming up here in a couple weeks. We just have Bobby the Chief Taylor on this week.
Great.
Yeah, he's great, dude. Bobby is just a wealth of story and knowledge. He was awesome. We've got we're cranking now, man. This is the busiest time of year for us, so we're rocking and rolling, man.
So, and before I let you go, I just wanted to say congratulations, Grandpa Greg, and also congratulations. I don't know if you know this, but you guys actually got the best looking grandparents in Tampa Bay, you and your lovely wife. It's all because of her, but you know, just it goes with the one and only. She's the brains and the beauty of the operation. We all
100% is, dude. But thank you very much. It's pretty awesome to be grandparents. We're G-Pot and Glammy because she's obviously as beautiful as she is. She can only be a Glammy. But yeah, man, it's an amazing feeling, man. I didn't know how it was going to feel, like you said, being, young. I'm only 49, so not too old as far as a grandparent goes. But yeah, it's an amazing feeling, man. Being a grandparent is awesome. She's beautiful. She's healthy. That's all we can ask for. And life is good, man.
You got that right. Well, Greg, thank you for all that you do. I appreciate a couple minutes today, and especially because I know how busy you guys are. You guys are unbelievable, and stay safe this weekend, and we'll definitely get you on the pod soon, my brother. Thank you.
I appreciate you, man.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Jay.
See you guys.
Bye, boss.
See you well. You got it. The Wolf family. We love them, man. They're so awesome. Greg and Laura. That guy don't stop. He does not stop. He's everywhere, man, which is so great to see. Follow him, Greg Wolf, TBL. The block party with he and Braden Coburn is just amazing. And Bobby the Chief Taylor, he's turning 80 years old this week. And if you know anything about Bobby the Chief Taylor, he is not short for stories. He just sitting there. So how it goes up in the press box, and people are always asking me, like, first off, people were wondering, like, are you still going to be able to get credentials? Are you still going to be able to get into these games? And there was no guarantee that was the case. There really wasn't. And this is what I like about doing the podcast, because I give you an idea, a little peek behind the curtain of how the logistics are. Because a lot of people don't know, even some of my friends and family members, they don't understand. Like, are you still going to be able to cover games? Well, I didn't necessarily think about that right after what happens, but yeah, as the day went on, I was like, I really hope I can still go cover these games. The Tampa Bay Lightning were one of the first teams to reach out and say, yes, no problem. If you're staying in the media, if you're still doing what you do, you still have our support and you can still be credentialed. I still have my seat in the front row, which I'm so honored and humbled and thankful for that. Same thing with the Buccaneers. Buccaneers letting me know, hey, like, we got to change your credential because you don't work there anymore, but you're still going to be credentialed throughout the entire season. And, if you continue to do this, like, we have your back. Like, that's extremely humbling to hear that from both of those franchises, because we're in the middle of those seasons, right? And then, getting notice from the Rays. Obviously, they were in their off season, but getting mentions from them and, hey, send us a new email. We got to send you all of our stuff. Like, the fact that these teams, and it goes without being said that the Sun and the Rowdies, also in USF, continue to say, like, you're here, you're one of us, you're a part of Team Tampa Bay. We've had Rob Higgins from the Tampa Bay Sports Commission on the show. And I hope that you guys understand that through what I've been trying to do through these, now almost 3 weeks of doing the podcast, is I still, as much as I do talk about pretty much everything that's going on in the sports world, like, I'm here for you guys, and I'm here to use that my relationships and my experiences of covering the teams in the Tampa Bay area and giving you some insight that maybe we didn't have an opportunity to do so when we were on WDAE, where we had to focus on certain things, had to focus on topic A and recycling the same old topics over and over and over again. We're going to get to the main topics. We're going to talk about the Liam Cohens of the world and the Victor Hedmans of the world, but I also want to give you a peek behind the curtain on what it's like to cover these teams and a peek behind the curtains on the people that do cover these teams. That's why the conversation that we had yesterday with Gabby Shirley about covering Nikita Kucherov and how she's learned about her profession over the last 4 years, what works, what doesn't work. Like, I think that kind of stuff is interesting. And I want to know of course you want to be entertained, but you want to be informed too. You guys are Tampa Bay sports fans. And even if you're watching from across the country, like, I'm bringing in experts from those teams that cover these people, right? Bringing in a guy like Luke Easterling, who covers all NFL. He lives out in the West Coast. We've had Jim Costa and Mark Ryan on from Detroit. Our guy, Jake Asman, is going to join us at 2:00 today. He's all over the Jets. Like, that's what I try to bring to this program. That's what I've always tried to bring when I was at DAE. And now when I'm here doing the J Recher podcast. And again, it's not always what you know, it's who you know, right? And I think the best balance is just a combination of both of those things. So the fact that I handled what happened to me the way I did, I think helps these franchises go like, yeah, we know that this guy is going to make sure that he puts his best foot forward, puts good content out there. I understand that there's got to be a journalistic integrity. I'm not a journalist, but I'm also not going to be like making personal attacks and verbal shouting matches with players and stuff like that. I just don't do that. Like, that's not how I ever was. That's not how I'll ever be. I don't call for people's jobs. Like, I will question things because I think conversation is great, but I mean, it's just the way it goes, right? So thank you for all the support and being able to sit up in the press box there at Emily Arena. The way that this seating arrangement goes is you have Ed Encina, and there's a couple of seats for the Tampa Bay Times guys. Then there's Eric Erlinson, and then there's me. So I got the 5th seat for the Lightning press box. Not too bad, right? Our guy Corey Long, who joins us every once in a while for NHL.com, like, he doesn't ever really come upstairs. He stays down in the press room downstairs. He just chills out. And then Chief sits next to me, Bobby the Chief Taylor. Like, it's crazy to hear the things that comes out of Chief's mouth, because I'm not going to say all of them here on the show today, but we got to get him on the program. Maybe we can get him on tomorrow because it's his birthday. It's coming up. We got to look it up. We got to look up when Bobby the Chief Taylor's birthday is, because I wish we could do things where we like call people on air. Chief, January 24th. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. How great is that? Oh my God. We should just call him. But we should call him right now. Tomorrow. Tomorrow's his birthday. We'll call him tomorrow. We're going to call him live on the show. He's not going to be on video, but I will call him on speakerphone, and we're going to wish Bobby the Chief Taylor happy birthday. If I don't remember, please let me remind me tomorrow. We will call Bobby the Chief Taylor live on the air. And I know Ryan B, we just mentioned it. They just came out with a podcast on Bobby the Chief Taylor. Yeah, we just had Greg Wolf on. If you missed it, Ryan, Greg Wolf was here, block party with our guy, Braden Coburn. Those guys do a live podcast once a month. And if you guys don't know, I am actually the host of like the pre-show for that. So we have one actually, I think next Wednesday over at the Cigar City Tap Room, sponsored by Highlight. So if there's any way that you guys can go to those live recordings, I know they send out emails about that and they go quickly. Like, it's tough to be able to get in there, but if you ever get an opportunity to do that, please do. Let's see. Oh, it's next Thursday. Let's see. All right, Nick in Sarasota. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. That's another way to put it. I like that. Russell, Fire the Cannons turning 37 today. Pretty good Super Bowl. Yes. Wait, you're turning 37 or the Super Bowl wins turning 37? Let me know about that one. Let's get a Hammer Time segment on the show, sponsored by Honest Hammer. I'm all about that. Let's do it. Chief and I are in great company with birthdays. You got that right. All right, so it is your birthday today. Congratulations, and shout out to our guy Russell Hammer, the one and only. Happy birthday to you, buddy. You've always been a big supporter of me and everything that we do. And the stash, appreciate my guy. I'm so glad you and Ian are doing your thing again too. We need all of the Beckles and Recher. You're going to hear us every Wednesday right here on my channel, on my YouTube channel. So another reason why, if people don't know about what's going on with me or want to know what's going on with Ian, it'll be right here on my YouTube channel. Beckles and Recher every Wednesday about 3:30 or so. Because by the time I leave here at like 2 o'clock and I get there, it's around 2:30, 2:45. We're still kind of shooting the breeze, figuring out which direction we want to go. Obviously, it's a little more laid back than we're used to. But yeah, right around 3:30 every Wednesday, we're going to go live. And the things we're going to talk about, it's just going to be anything and everything. It really is. It's not going to be set. It's not going to be, all right, all sports all the time. Yesterday, we were talking about Snoop Dogg, and we were talking about P. Diddy, and we were talking about a story with the NFL where there was a doctor called Dr. Boudreaux, and he was letting people know that there was I think it was like a model, and she would go up to guys at the bar and she would get them to go back to the hotel room, and then she would drug them, and then he would do something to them, and he would take a video and then put it there and bribe the guy and blackmail him. If you missed that story, it's up on my channel, so you can go look at it later on. The Beckles and Recher podcast from yesterday. What a crazy story. And Ian's never told that story before on any of the shows that he's been on. Think about that. Ian's been on the air for damn near, 20, 30 years here? And that story never came out, whether he's filling in for Chris Thomas, working with Ron Diaz, working with Mike Calta on 1025 The Bone. That story that he said yesterday on the Beckles and Recher podcast, he never brought that up ever. That's the kind of content that you're going to get on the Beckles and Recher podcast, heard every single Wednesday at around 3:30 right here on my YouTube channel. One thing that was a little depressing today when it came to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was they announced a bunch of things for the AP Awards, and shout out to Rob Motti for joining us yesterday from the AP. But the one thing we looked at for the Buccaneers was, okay, you're not getting Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, none of that. No Defensive Rookie of the Year, but Offensive Rookie of the Year. Could Bucky Irving be a finalist? Now, looking at it today, Bucky Irving did not make the finalists for the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And here's the 5 guys that made it in over Bucky. Brock Bowers, who was probably the best tight end in football this year. You're not getting in over Brock Bowers. Also, Jaden Daniels. We've spoken so much about Jaden Daniels over the last couple of weeks. There's no reason why that he shouldn't have been on that list. Listen, I'm sorry. Bucky Irving's had a fantastic year. He has not had a better year than Jaden Daniels. Also, Malik Neighbors. I mean, over 100 catches. He just 109 catches for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. You have over 100 catches your rookie year. You're balling. He was one of the best receivers. That's the thing. Those 3 guys were not only the best rookies this year, but also some of the best players in the NFL this year. The last 2, I really kind of had to look back and wonder, all right, should Bucky get in over either one of these guys? And the first guy was Bo Nix. And rookie quarterback, we know what his career was like. Auburn, Oregon, getting drafted by the Denver Broncos. The first good game that he had all season long was against the Buccaneers at Raymond James Stadium there in week 3. That was one of the trippiest games all year long, where you were going into the game, if you're a Buccaneers fan, going, this team's 2-0. We beat Washington. We beat Detroit. Let's go. This team's 0-2 rookie quarterback. Not a chance they win this game against the Buccaneers. Well, Bo Nix and Sean Payton, they had other plans, and they were really, really good that day, and that spurred them on for the rest of the season. So I wondered, okay, just looking at the outside, I was like, damn, tough to put 2 quarterbacks on that list. How good did he really play? Well, he led him to the playoffs for the first time in 9 years. He was one of 3 quarterbacks to lead his team from the AFC West. So it wasn't like he was a great quarterback or a great player in a bad division where they won the division like we've seen with the Buccaneers, right? It wasn't one of those situations where he was the best of the worst, right? He made the playoffs in a division where Justin Herbert and the Chargers did, as well as Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. He threw for over 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns. He did throw 12 picks, but it's going to happen as a rookie. Think about your, pass to or TD to interception ratio there, 29-12. And he also ran for 430 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's hard to keep him out. And as much as I do love what we saw from Bucky Irving this year, I don't necessarily think that he had a better year after looking into it than a guy like Bo Nix. I mean, again, he threw for 3,700 yards, 12th best in the league. I mean, he threw for 29 touchdowns, which was good for 6th in the league. I mean, and he has good players on offense, but it's not like he didn't have a Justin Jefferson type, right? He didn't have a Jamar Chase type. I mean, you look at the 5 guys ahead of him in touchdowns. It was Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, and Sam Darnold. I think you just tip your hat to Bo Nix and be like, all right, man. Yeah, I guess. The more you look into it, I say okay. And then the last one was Brian Thomas. I'm like, Brian Thomas, you look at it and you go, okay, did he really have a better year than Bucky Irving? He had over 1,200 yards, 1,282, which is good for third. Not just third for rookies, third in the National Football League. So when you look at the tumultuous year that the Jacksonville Jaguars had, he had 1,282 yards, which he was only behind guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. He had 87 grabs, which was good for tied for 16th. Okay, and then touchdowns, he also had 10, tied for 6th. So as much as I wrote this down before the show today, that Bucky Irving got hosed for being a finalist for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But the more and more research and the more I looked into it, like, I don't think he got hosed. I think he was probably 6th. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that he's not going to have a better future. It doesn't mean that overall he's not going to be a better fit for his team. But as far as how we grade guys, he didn't have a better rookie year than Brock Bowers, Ballin, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors. And then after doing further research, I don't think he had a better rookie year than Bo Nixon and Brian Thomas either. What say you, Bucs Nation? Do you agree with that sentiment? Do you think Bucky got hosed? What place should he have come in? And again, it's not finalized yet. We'll find out, as we get closer to the end of the season. But do you think Bucky Irving got hosed? Do you think he should have been a finalist for Offensive Player of the Year, or Offensive Rookie of the Year? Big Dummy Dan, that Broncos L turned to be the salt in the wound that was his season. Oof. Yeah, that was a rough one as well. TB Punk Films, you should get Ron Diaz on for one podcast. That is a great suggestion, and that is something that we are working on. Some of the names that we're working on for the Beckles and Recher podcast are Ron Diaz, are Phil Esposito, are Warren Sapp, guys like that. We're working on it. So we'll see if we can get them in sooner rather than later. I agree, Tampa Bay, Ron Diaz, the godfather of Tampa. I remember listening to him on YNF, him and Ron Bennington, the Ron and Ron days. That precedes my time here in the Tampa Bay area. But if you ever want to see what that show was all about, and don't do it right now, Let the Puppies Breathe. Go look it up on YouTube. It's about 45 minutes long, and it is all Ron and Ron stuff, and it just takes you back. It is literally like stepping into a time machine and going back and seeing what Ron and Ron was all about. Half of that stuff would have gotten canceled nowadays. It's crazy. But I actually watched that Ian's place one time, and he walked in. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm actually watching Ron's Let the Puppies Breathe thing on YouTube." And he sat down, and we almost watched the whole thing. So when you get a chance, go check it out. Let the Puppies Breathe. It is certainly brings you back. Our guy Ren, in the end, it doesn't matter. Daniels is winning. Name me who was in the running for Rookie of the Year last season. I'll wait. I'm with you, Ren. It's just something to talk about today because it came out. We're always talking about the pertinent topics. In the end, you're right. It doesn't matter because you want to be able to build off of what happened last season. And I'm pretty sure that CJ Stroud won the Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. I could be wrong, but I think it would be CJ Stroud. Let me see. 2023 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. Remember, only trust the AP as our guy. Yeah, it was CJ Stroud. So he had a fantastic rookie season for the Houston Texans. He did a great job for them. In year two, obviously comes back to the pack a little bit, but listen, at the end of the day, you lead your team to the playoffs. That's the most important thing. And what also hurts him, and Big Dummy Dan says, Bucky didn't get hosed, he got motivated, NFL better. Watch out next fall. He is a whole beast. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing we got to keep in to consideration as well. Because when you look at Bucky Irving, part of the things that hurt him was that he really didn't get the lion's share of the work until the middle of the season. And when you look at the game log for Bucky, early on in the year, 9 carries for 62, 2 catches for 14. You're only looking at 76 yards of total, total 76 total yards of offense for a guy like Bucky Irving, right? You didn't get over in his first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In his first 9 games with the Buccaneers, He only had more than 10 carries twice. He actually had 9 in 5 of them. How nuts is that? And then down the stretch for the last 8 games, 7 out of those 8 games, he had 12 carries or more. And you're looking at 100-yard games, 88-yard games, 89-yard games. The rushing yards, he didn't have a rushing touchdown until week 4. So imagine if Bucky was a guy that they looked to early and often to start the season, right? It would have been a completely different ball game. And it was when Rashad went down, and you kind of see the way everything shook out. Rashad goes down. He doesn't play in that game against New Orleans. Bucky carries the ball 14 times for 81 yards. That was the game where Sean Tucker won NFL or NFC Offensive Player of the Week. It's kind of crazy. You could see the stats for Bucky and realize like what happened with the Bucs this year. So he goes, Rashad gets banged up. He doesn't play in that game against New Orleans. We know Sean Tucker balls the hell out. And then Bucky Irving carries the ball 14 times for 81 yards. And you go, oh shit, this guy's legit. Rashad comes back. The usage goes down a little bit for Bucky, 23, 44, and 24 yards in straight losses against Baltimore, Atlanta, and KC. Then he gets the rock a little bit more in the loss to San Francisco, 13 for 73. And then that game against the Giants, that's when he started taking off, 12 for 88. The overtime win against Carolina, 25 for 152. He wasn't 100% against the Raiders. And then 15, 16, 20, and 19 carries down the stretch as the Bucs win 3 of their last 4 games to make it into the playoffs. So, yeah, that is the kind of – you can kind of tell what went on this season for the Buccaneers running game based on what happened with Bucky Irving. And I'm so curious to see what happens with the running game going forward. Do you use another draft pick? I don't think so. I don't think you should. I also don't think you should get rid of guys. And I know we just had Luke Easterling on talking about Jamel Dean possibly moving on from him. You could, but you also don't necessarily have a guy like Zion McCollum that's going to step in like we saw with Carlton Davis. Like part of the reason why they were able to be comfortable moving on from Carlton Davis was because they saw the maturation for a guy like Zion McCollum. They said, wow, this kid was just clearly a special teams guy in year 1, but he was fantastic. Couldn't cover anything in year 1, but he got better in year 2. And they said, all right, you're looking at this kid, the steps of maturation, the steps of progression. He'll be better. He'll be ready for the spot. And I thought he played pretty good. Thought he played okay. Needs to do a better job of coming away with some interceptions, but it's not just Zion. That's everybody. Ren says, hot take, I don't think RBs should be praised for 1,000 yards. That was the thing when the NFL played 10 games. RBs, they go for 1,700 is the equivalent. Yeah, and I think you could say the same thing. And Ren, it's kind of funny that you say that because that's what I was and I quietly saying this during the Mike Evans situation of like, it's 1,000 yards in 17 games now, right? So it's not the same. It was a different accomplishment back in the day where you played, even when it was 16 games, I think it was a little bit easier, a little bit more palatable, but there's more games coming. Like there's going to be 18, and I wouldn't be surprised if they play 20 games with 2 buys and get rid of the offseason, preseason as a whole. And then what? Are people still going to be like, wow, 1,000 games, it's great? Because think about it, you get up to 20 games and you're rushing for 1,000 yards. You're getting 50 a game. That's not good. Mike Frinter, my guy, being behind Rashad and splitting carries helped Bucky's career for the long run, but hurt his stats this year moving forward. He has confidence now. Yeah, I'm with you. And one thing that we have to also be 100% with, and let's not forget this, okay, is that during times this year as a rookie, Bucky has dealt with foot injury, I think an ankle injury and a back injury. I know there were a knee injury instead of the ankle, but there was 3 different injuries that Bucky dealt with this year. You have to be cognizant of that. Running backs take an absolute beating. There's a reason why it is the position that has the least amount of years attached to it, just because it's brutal. Guys like Saquon and Derrick Henry, like they're anomalies. You see guys, and it's not like they just progressively get worse. There's these running backs, they just fall off the cliff. So for a guy like Bucky Irving already dealing with, injuries in year 1, where it's not like long-term, it's not like an ACL or anything like that, but just nagging, he runs hard. Even though he's not the biggest guy out there, he runs hard. So he's not a guy that's going to shy away from contact. He's a guy that gets a bunch of yards after contact. He's a pinball. He bounces off of these guys. And goes for these bigger yards. But with Rashad being a little bigger and Sean Tucker being a little bigger, like if there's opportunities to get those guys in the game, I think the Buccaneers with Bucky Irving as their running back needs to certainly be smart about that next year and beyond. Because we saw he wasn't completely healthy all year long, and that's something that we keep in context as well when we talk about why he's not a top 5 guy for offensive rookie of the year. Well, if he was 100%, if he was 100% healthy, that might have helped him as well. Some other news that we're seeing around right now across the world of sports. Looks like the Dallas Cowboys could be closing in on Brian Schottenheimer as being their next head coach. That was about an hour ago. We'll keep an eye on that as well. You know, we see kind of these random things. We don't want to go 100% and say, oh yeah, this is exactly what's going to be. Also, Dan Bartels is coming out saying that there's a sense that the Blue Jays, and he's from the New York Post, that the Blue Jays are going to go 3 years, $75 million with Pete Alonso. So Pete Alonso, obviously we keep a close eye on him with the Tampa Bay area, him going to Plant High School, New York Mets. So we'll see what his future holds. I was wondering if the Yankees were going to be an option for him. They went to Paul Goldschmidt. So who knows? I know Pete wants to return to the Mets, but certainly not for a really, really long-term deal. He wants to get rewarded, but he's a guy that, I mean, geez, I don't know. Like, I don't know what his future holds. He's in a real tough spot because I think it would have been easier for him not to have such a hard stance on what he deserves. But he also had a fantastic postseason. And part of the reason why he is a guy that wants that money because he came up big for the Mets down the stretch and helped lead them to the NLCS. Jermsky, who will be the Saints' new quarterback? I know what you meant, the coach. It's going to be Carr and Rattler there for a while. Coach, I mean, we'll see, man. We'll see what the New Orleans Saints are doing because they are a team with cap hell. You look at if you guys ever go to Spotrac, Spotrac or Spot-Track, whatever you want to call it, SPOTRAC.com. If you've never checked out that website, go check it out. Because if you want to know what a guy's contract is in any of the major sports, they break it all down for you in a huge way. And we'll do it right now. When you go to Spot-Track and see the NFL and you look at the team cap page and you're looking at cap space for next year, you see New England's got $125 million. The Raiders have $95 million. The Buccaneers down at $23 million. And of course, this kind of thing changes. I'm just kind of giving you a broad scope of the entire thing. And then you go down to the end, right? And the last 2 teams, the Cleveland Browns are minus $26 million. Thank you, Deshaun Watson. They're not the worst, though. The New Orleans Saints, minus $50 million. When you look at what the New Orleans Saints did to their team and how they mortgaged the future for what they have not been able to do, like it's crazy to me. We just mentioned love-hate relationships with teams. Like if you're a New Orleans Saints fan, they have to be on the list because Dennis Allen was not a good coach ever. And I'm talking about as a head coach. When things like that happen, you're like, good. They're in the Bucs division. The Bucs will take care of business. So I can't quite understand why you pay all these aging guys and pay all this money and you gave Carr all that money. Oh my God, what are you doing, dude? Hey, listen, you got to play the Bucs twice a year. That's great. It's just mind-boggling that these teams are managed so poorly. And let that be a reminder when you talk about Jason Light. And if you're one of those people that consistently want to hold the Roberto Aguayo and some of these other things over the head of Jason Light, look at what he was able to do with the dead cap money of Tom Brady and the way that he was able to deal with that and shuffle the deck and make sure that he brings people in and is able to stay cap compliant. Because you have an example in New Orleans, snowy New Orleans, of guys just absolutely shit the bed. And they are in a bad spot. I don't care who their coach is. Right? They're going to roll Carr out under center again. Great. Spencer Rattler. Okay. Does anybody look at Spencer Rattler and is scared? Are you scared of Spencer Rattler? I'm not. Decent player, but I'm not. Somebody just asked about Atlanta. Minus 7 million. Right? So, I mean, it's kind of wild to think that the Buccaneers are in a good spot. And of course, those numbers are going to change. But the Bucs are in a good spot. I look at certain teams out there and I wonder, okay, if you're New England, Mike Vrabel's got to be licking his lips going, all right, I got Drake May. I got a bunch of cap space. Keep an eye on them. Is Tyreek Hill an option there? He probably doesn't want to go to cold weather. But I look at them. I look at Las Vegas. I mean, look at these teams that are at the top of the list when it comes to cap space. A lot of them are teams that aren't that good. But then you look and you go down a little bit. Detroit's got 59 million. And of course, they have to use this cap space and some of the guys they're going to be able to bring back, right? I look at a team like Washington. They're 90 million. They got a lot of room to work with. The Raiders, Arizona's got 72. The next two teams, Chicago 69, Chargers 64, Vikings 63. I mean, these teams are still going to be good. And a lot of these teams that have made the playoffs this year, you have some cap space. Man, that's how you build. But you got to do it smart. It's not just like, all right, you have 63 million in cap space. Let's go pay a guy 50 and another guy 13. You can't do that. You got to spread it out. You also need money for your draft picks. Like you never know what holes that you're going to have to plug. So when I look at the situation of what the Saints are doing, think about, I just mentioned that. If you had 63 million in cap space and like trying to find the right pieces, what if you're 60 over, 50 over, and you're like, I got to get rid of this guy. I got to get rid of this. I don't know what to do. It's just like with Atlanta and New Orleans, that is another reason why, regardless of what happens in the offseason, you're still going to get some numbnuts out there picking another team outside of the Buccaneers. What are you, freaking crazy? The last 2 years, I'm in no way a homer where I can't, like, I'm too close to the trees to see the forest. Like, I didn't think it was that difficult at all to think that the Buccaneers were going to win the division the last 2 years. And I know it wasn't easy, but I think if you just honestly took a step back and you looked at the other teams, like the Saints are in cap hell, and I've never trusted any quarterback whose last name is Carr. Atlanta getting and trading for Kirk Cousins, or signing Kirk Cousins for $180 million, an aging guy in his late 30s with it coming off an Achilles injury, and then trading for Matthew Judon, also coming off an Achilles injury, and getting a guy in Justin Simmons who plays the exact same position as your best defensive player in Jesse Bates. Like, what kind of sense did that make? None. As we get closer and closer to the NFL offseason, again, don't get distracted by, the great offseason moves. The offseason moves are like bikinis. They show certain things. They don't show everything. That may not make sense, but you know what I'm getting at. Our guy Ed Encina is going to join us at 1:30. I want to get to this real quick before we get to Ed. This came out yesterday. Golden State Warriors star Draymond Green has apologized for punching his former teammate Jordan Poole and says now it's time to move on from the incident. Now, Poole, who's now with the Washington Wizards, was asked about, he went back to the Warriors home in San Francisco at the Chase Center, and he was asked about, everything over there and the love that he got, the nice warm reception. He goes, yeah, I got a lot of love for most of those guys over there. So Draymond Green comes out and tweets, I really am sorry. And he says he responded on Twitter that way because it's been 3 years. He said it on his podcast or the Draymond Green Show with Baron Davis. Like, let's move on. We've moved on. I really am sorry. That statement by Poole was kind of like it was looking for some sympathy, kind of him wanting to make me out to be the bad guy. Move on, bro. It is what it is. I'm sorry I shouldn't have punched him, but it happened. Let's move on. Sorry, Draymond. That's not the way this works. You don't get to decide when people move on. You don't get to decide when it's over. If he's being petty, he's being petty, whatever. That's your prerogative. You can say that. But the fact that you're acting like everybody should just like sweep this under the rug, no, man. Sorry. Like, you're the bad guy in this. If nobody's making you out to be the bad guy, like you were. Like, you literally pressed one of your teammates to the point where that you stalled off and you punched him in the face. This wasn't guys talking shit back and forth or pushing, and one guy was punching and one guy was punching. Yeah, I get you were talking shit, but you went off and you went up to him and you stalled off on him. You hit him with a punch that people wanted to keep under wraps, but the Golden State Warriors there, and you probably remember the video, you can go look it up. But that security footage is damning. And that's something that you have to live with the rest of your career, whether you think it's fair or not. I'm sorry. That's just the nature of the beast. When you do something like that, something where you punch a teammate in the face, if he still harbors ill will towards you, you don't have shit to say. You have nothing to say. You did that. You brought this upon yourself. And for you to sit there playing now like you're the victim because people don't want to look past it. Like, sorry, man, this isn't the way it works. If he still feels some type of way, I'm not faulting him for that. This guy goes to one of the best teams in the NBA, an absolute dynasty, the biggest dynasty that we've seen probably in all of sports in the last decade, the Golden State Warriors. And then you ruined it by punching him straight in the grill. You did that. Nobody else. You're the guy at fault. People aren't making you out to be the bad guy. You were the bad guy. You were the heel. You were the villain. Wear it. And I know you did apologize, but listen, you want to talk about bringing attention in this scenario? You didn't have to tweet out, "I really am sorry," because now you are the person that's looking for forgiveness. Who gives a shit what the rest of us have to say? You're putting out these tweets to millions of people that are just going to eat it up like fodder. You know what's going to happen. You have a podcast, bro. You're trying to grow your brand. We're not dumb. But don't play the sympathy card with you like we should feel bad for you. I don't feel bad for Draymond Green. You're talking about a guy that's a multiple-time champion that has hundreds of millions of dollars in his bank account. A guy who punched his teammate. You're one of the last people I feel bad about, buddy. Sorry, that is never going to change. So don't be surprised when the guy that you punched in the face, when he's asked an honest question by the media, if he says, "Yeah, I got love for most guys over there." You're not one of them. And those pot shots and those little comments that may seem petty, that may seem kind of bitchy, like that's something that you're going to have to deal with, bud. Sorry. You did that. You brought that upon yourself. And I'm not a big apology guy. I don't like when people say they're sorry when they don't mean it. And I listen, there's a lot more people going through real life shit in their lives that they can't coincide with, that they can't rationalize, that they can't compartmentalize. Like, there's things that people are dealing with that means a whole hell of a lot more than a freaking basketball game or a basketball player. So for you to be going out here on social media and going out in your podcast looking for sympathy and saying that people should get over it, lame and tone deaf. And just, again, another reason why people look at Draymond Green and they're like, respect his, ability to be a part of a winning team and a winning culture, a guy that's willing to do whatever it takes on the court, doesn't need an offense to run through him. He's going to get his rebounds. He's going to play tough defense. Like, yeah, in that aspect purely, yeah, okay. I respect that aspect of your gangster. But you've also been fined a lot. You've also been suspended a lot. There's also a lot of things that he's done throughout his career where you're just like, I'm good. I'm good on Draymond Green, right? Like, I'm good. Like, if he doesn't play another game in the NBA, like, I'm not losing sleep over it. And I don't think anybody is. But you continuously do things like this, like the people that hate on you, the people that are never going to be Draymond Green fans, like, you just stoke that flame. You fuel that fire. There's plenty of other athletes in other sports and in the NBA to cheer for. That is not where their energy is put. And I just wanted to come out and say that today, because I think at times, we talk about different things in sports, but also if you're going to be a person that is going to have a podcast and you want to control your narrative by being active on social media and having your own podcast, I think at times it's a cop-out. You don't speak as much to the media, and you don't say things to the media where they're allowed to do their jobs, because you're just going to be able to take all that content for yourself. All right, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I think you leave yourself open to criticism, and you leave yourself open to things like this, where people are able to speak on your actions. Because at the end of the day, as a professional athlete, like, you're still in the mainstream. You're still playing sports, and you're still playing for one of the most recognizable franchises in the NBA. So there's my 2 cents on the Draymond Green situation. It is 1:30 on a Thursday, and you know what that means. And joining us here on the program. That's a night. Is that an NY hat?
It's a New York Knights hat. You ever seen? It's Roy Hobbs. You ever seen the?
Wow!
The
Taking me back. Taking me back. Just don't knock over my lights, buddy. Don't hit the lights out with your great takes that you got coming out. When do you leave?
Tomorrow morning.
Okay, because I was wondering. I was like, oh, there's morning skate at 2. Like, I wonder if Ed's up there already. But you leave tomorrow morning. You'll be at both games, Chicago and Detroit.
Chicago and Detroit, yes, sir.
Nice, man. How are you feeling after Sunday? I called you because I was concerned about you. The Ravens losing to the Bills. What a great game, man. What an incredible effort by Baltimore. And, it sucks to see Mark Andrews dropping the pass, but a really great story too at Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills and Bills Mafia really supporting, Mark Andrews and raising, I think it was like $30,000 or $60,000 for T1D for type 1 diabetes. And it takes away a little bit of the sting, but tough because Baltimore had such a great year, man.
No, they did. And, it kind of comes down to all the basics that we always talk about is like, turnovers and penalties, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great game. I thought that, obviously they had a chance till the end, and, it's tough because I think a lot of Ravens fans in Baltimore, they're waiting to get over the hump, and you thought that this might be the year just because they were so well built and the defense was playing well. And, obviously you had that two-headed monster in the backfield, but it's there's next year, right? Actually, it sucks. It's not, it sucks, but like, honestly, like, I think, you kind of like the Buffalo story though, still, and it's, you
lost to a good team. You lost to a great quarterback. Yeah. So it's not like you lost to a clearly inferior team. Like, it was a battle. It certainly was a battle.
For sure.
Before we talk Lightning, and of course, I want to ask you about the Hall of Fame for baseball and some WWE, but I want to ask you this. I brought this up at the start of the show. What team would you classify as a team that has a fan base with a love-hate relationship? Because I have it with this team right here over my shoulder in Manchester United, where they could beat Arsenal, they could beat Liverpool, but then they lose to like the worst teams ever. And it just drives me nuts. And I have a love-hate relationship. I'll get up at 7:30 in the morning, and then they'll lose or they'll draw 0-0, 0-0, and I'll be pissed.
Yeah.
What team, when you think love-hate relationship, what do you think?
In
Dallas?
general, like across all sports?
Yeah. Because other teams, I put
honestly
Dallas Cowboys.
The Cowboys have become that. Yeah. I mean, it's, their fan. And I actually, honestly, like, before the Ravens came to town, I grew up a Cowboys fan. And this was during the glory days, because keep in mind, when I was a kid, I had to watch the Mayflower trucks leave Baltimore when the Colts left town. Man. So you didn't have a football team, and you didn't embrace the Redskins because they were like, they were the Redskins, and you have that Baltimore DC rivalry. So, I kind of embraced the Cowboys, and as a kid, I used to go with my Aikman jersey on and go to RFK Stadium and root for them. And those were the glory days though, right? I mean, the Super Bowl teams, the triplets and everything like that. But, but I do know still, like, how much, like, man, it is love-hate. Like, it's just, it's almost that, why you can't have nice things thing. But with the Cowboys, it's different because they go out there, they spend the money, they try to rework it, and it just falls on their face every time, whether it's like, the Tony Romo botched, snap to
Des Bryant,
Des Bryant, everything. It's just like, it's almost a thing where it's like, well, what's it going to be next? And to be honest, the Ravens were a little bit like that until they won, recently. Well, I guess that Super Bowl in New Orleans against the 49ers. But, you couldn't beat Brady in the playoffs. The Lee Evans drop in the end zone, little stuff like that. And like, I know all teams kind of have that and all fan bases kind of have that, but I do think with the Cowboys now, it's become that kind of thing. But I mean, going back to Buffalo, like I don't feel like there's any like love, like it's all love,
That's
what I mean?
exactly that's why I said love-hate
frustrated.
relationship, because they get mad, but they're diehard. Like I'm talking about team, and that's why Cowboys, they were my number one team. I got the Toronto Maple Leafs on there, right? Because every single year, the Rangers, New York Rangers are on there. I got the Mets, I got the Rays, because people, they love the Rays because it's us against the world, but then they hate how much they don't spend. The Knicks, the 76ers, Penn State, even the Florida Gators. Like, you love the Gators, but you hate Billy Napier. Like, it's just
right.
Those teams, I think. Oh, I got a question here. And if you have questions for Ed and Encina about the Lightning or anything, feel free to put them there at the bottom of the screen. This is a good one. Jay, ask Ed what he did after the Mark Andrews drop.
Oh, my God. Who's asking this question?
Do you see it? Can you see it on the screen?
Yes, I do see it. I don't remember it. I blacked.
You don't remember?
I was like, I think I got up from my couch, and I told you I was sitting on the couch, and I was just like, oh no, and then I like banged my head up against like the wall of my like. It wasn't like a hard bang. It was just
you did one of those?
Yeah, like it wasn't like a violent bang or anything. It was just
it
like
head on? Was
like
it the
head like leaning up against the
oh my God,
against the hallway wall there. So the person who's asking that question, who people know it's my wife, is she wanted me to redo it so she could have some cool video to post on Instagram or on social or something like that. But yeah, we that was just in the moment. But
are you okay? Are you in concussion?
It wasn't. I didn't hit my head. I was just like It was.
Was it a forceful? Like, was it?
No, it wasn't forceful.
It wasn't
more like it was more of like a lean in, like yeah.
Jeez. Oh man, there's nothing like your wife getting on you. I love that kind of stuff. Thank you, Shannon. We love you. Yeah, he was like, yeah, I love her. Thanks, Shannon. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Like losses like that, I had a video a while ago when I'm a big Knicks fan, when they had the worst record in the league and they didn't get the number one pick the year that Zion Williamson was coming out. And I was on the bed with like a blanket and I was like despondent. I was so upset. I was like, this sucks. I hate my life. This is terrible. And then, I guess it kind of worked out.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to that game and like, that last drive, you're like, okay, they got a chance. And then they just drive it down the field and you're like, given everything that happened to him, all the turnovers and everything, like you're like, man, maybe they can pull it out. So you go like from there and then up,
roller
and
coaster,
like everything, and then you're like, Jesus. But
not good, man. All right, let's talk a little Lightning hockey here. Kind of a weird couple of games north of the border. I mean, you played the Leafs, with the firepower, and then the Canadians. You have the lead, you blow it. What do you make of the team's struggles in the division and what we've seen the last two games from them?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. What are they, 3-8 no against the division right now? So, obviously you got to be better, right? And especially right now with some of these teams coming on, I mean, whether it's Montreal, whether it's Ottawa, Detroit's been pretty hot. So, you've got to make up some of these points against these teams. Like I think we said last week is, they played so few games than everyone else. And now is the time in January where they've got to really kind of make up, you have the games in hand. Now you got to make them up. So I think it's pretty disappointing that they didn't get anything out of those. And, especially the Montreal game, I mean, Montreal plays a certain kind of hockey that, can be really frustrating, especially when they play from behind, I mean, like, and they're just a grind hustle team that, finds little places to shoot the puck and they're able to do it. But you look at that game, you're up 2-0, and even when they give up the lead, like that third period, they pretty much dominated it. I think that on 5-on-5 they only allowed like 3 high danger scoring chances all game. So I don't think it was Vasi's best game.
Right.
The first goal was one that just kind of like I don't even see the hole where that slid through there. But But then the game-winning goal was one where we see this a lot sometimes with them, especially at this point of the year, is where they overload to one side in coverage, and then you leave a guy wide open on the other side of the ice, and that's what happened. I mean, like, should Vasi get that goal? That shot? I mean, probably like 8 times out of 10, he probably at least gets a stick on it or deflects it or something. But that's kind of lightning hockey every once in a while that we see. Is like they follow the puck, right, instead of following the man, and especially when they feel like they're on their toes a little bit. And we've seen over the course of the season where they've had that kind of clutch to them in the third period, and that was one of those games where they clearly, even though they kind of dictated the pace of that third period, that they really didn't, they didn't figure out a way, and that's what they're going to have to do, over the course of the next, few weeks. This, I mean, even this back-to-back coming up, even though, Chicago's not a conference team, it's important. It's important to get points, because right now, I was just writing this is, no matter what happens tonight on an idle day for them, they're going to get bumped out of that third place spot, because Ottawa and Boston play each other and they're both a point behind. So, now you're kind of in that area of 4 or 5 teams that are all within 3 points of each other. And, you've got to make up these points. And the stuff on the road, like Cooper's been talking about all the time, is like starting on time. I just don't get it. You know what I mean? I don't get like how, these slow starts equate on the road. It's just one of these things where, I mean, obviously the Montreal game, they started great and then they couldn't finish. So, but we always talk about this time of year, is like that 60 minutes of hockey, and that's what they're searching for. And it hasn't been easy. And, this is an important stretch for them for sure.
You got that right, buddy. What do you think of Max Crozier being in the lineup the last couple of games, and how the defense has kind of looked overall since Moser went down?
Yeah, I mean, I like. I mean, we've talked about. I mean, I like Crozier a lot. I think he's one of those guys that plays a really quiet game, which is good when you're a defenseman. Like, you're not making mistakes. He did have one play, I think, in the Toronto game where he was kind of caught up, in the play and got kind of caught out of position. But I think for the most part, he's one of those guys that's, like I said last week, he's really trustworthy. And there's. The only reason he wasn't getting called up earlier in the year was because he was hurt, during before Christmas and stuff. So he's going to be one of these guys who's, I think we're going to see a lot of. And again, the big question is how. Well, first off, the immediate question is, how's Eric Chernak, right? How is he going to be able to play over this weekend series? But also, how much longer they keep going with this 6D, because I do think, one thing that they've done when they've gotten out into these ruts is go to 11-7. And that's really helped, because one, you give a little bit of break to the defenseman core. They're not taking these super loaded minutes, and especially when the guy, comes out of the game after the first shift, like Chernak did a few nights ago. And also, you kind of force this, amongst the forwards, that your top guys are playing more minutes with different guys. And maybe that gets some of the bottom 6 guys going when you put, Nikita Kucherov with, the third or fourth, third line or something like that, and that's really actually helped them a lot, even earlier in the season when they've gotten kind of in a rut. Now, having said that, Nikita Kucherov's playing a ton of minutes right now.
Yeah, he is a lot.
And, he's playing both power play units. He's almost double shifting every once in a while between the Hagel line and the Cirelli line and the point line. So I don't know how much longer he can skate that long, but over the long haul, you wonder, how much maybe you do have to pull him back, because also too, as good as Nikita Kucherov is, when he's frustrated and he shows that frustration on the ice, I do think that kind of carries over amongst the team too. But yeah, I mean, I think those are some questions. I know you're asking about Crozier, but when you look at how they might play out the lineup wise, some questions kind of that I'm looking at going forward.
I didn't get I forgot to ask Eric this question yesterday, but I asked Gabby when she was on the other day. Has there ever been another player that you covered in sports like Nikita Kucherov? Because I've been here 10 years now, and I've covered all the teams here locally, and there's just we know it. Like we know, and I said it when we were on there, I think Monday or Tuesday by myself, just what it's like to cover Nikita Kucherov, because we know that as much as he loves hockey, he hates doing media.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. It's not like because he dislikes any of us. He just doesn't like that aspect of it. And I know, like, even when it's like, all right, 600th assist, like we start talking like, all right, Nikita's after the game. And I think it's important too, Ed, because again, I don't bring it up to paint you in a corner. I didn't try to do that with Gabby or Eric or myself. I brought it up because I think it's interesting the way that we have to deal with it, in a way of like, we're not trying to make him look bad either. He really doesn't like it. But I also don't like some of the comments were like, I don't like that they pester him and they bother him, because that couldn't be farther from the truth. Right. Of like, we don't ask for Nikita Kucherov 7 days a week. We know, like, pretty much the only time he gets asked for when there's a big, accomplishment or a big milestone. Have you ever covered another athlete like that? Because it just seems, for me, through this decade, it's just so unique.
Yeah, okay, I gotta be careful here, but
no, I know, but that's I think I understand, because like this isn't complaining, and I'm not trying to paint you in the corner, but I think it's important for us to be able to talk about, we do take precaution in being understanding that he doesn't like doing this. And I don't want people to look at the Tampa Bay media, because, and again, I don't always give a shit what other people say, Ed, but I also don't like seeing on social media when I post things about Nikita Kucherov, like, why don't you guys just leave him alone? Because I think that's bad. It's a bad look on you and Eric and Gabby and myself and everybody else that covers the team. I think it's important to just acknowledge the fact that, like, we know he doesn't like doing it, and we are very respectful of his time and respectful of his space. But it is like, it's not easy. Like, it's something that it is a little bit of a challenge.
All right, so I'm gonna go on a soapbox a little bit here, but there you go. To answer your question, no. There's never, and I've covered college football, I've covered Major League Baseball, I've covered the NFL, I've covered the NHL, obviously, covered a little bit of NBA, and I've never encountered any athlete that's like Nikita Kucherov. And part of it is that he doesn't like doing it. Part of it is that he doesn't see that it's a part of what his responsibility is in terms of helping the Tampa Bay Lightning win games. And that's the way he sees it. Now, again, I've always been under, and I think anyone I've covered and anyone I've worked with I hope they would agree, is that I'm very respectful of every athlete's space, knowing that, they have a job to do. Yes, they have media obligations, but at the end of the day, like, probably talking to me is not their favorite part of the day, even if I have a great relationship with the guy. And I have a lot of good relationships with guys in that room. So, like you said, we haven't asked for Nikita very often. And the thing that's a little bit frustrating for me is that, like, some of these short pressers that he's had have kind of become like jokes. It's like, oh, it's him being him. And it's kind of funny, but like, so you look at it from the aspect of, the coverage of the team, you'll get for aspect of like the team itself, the league. This guy's one of your best players, right? And the fact that he doesn't talk much, and the fact that he, will blow off a request to talk, it only hurts him. I'm for sure. I mean, I can guarantee you that the way people view Nikita Kucherov hurt him in, the
MVP
for the heart,
1,000%, because as being the only guy there in Toronto last year, yes,
what happened in the All-Star game for sure. I voted for him. I see him every day. I know how good he is on the ice. I know how important he is in the room. And if the Hart Trophy is about the most valuable player to his team, there's no doubt in my mind that Nikita Kucherov deserved my vote. Having said, I don't see Nathan McKinnon every day. I don't see Connor McDavid every day. But at the end of the day, that hurts his chances. It hurts the Lightning's opportunity to really take full advantage of how you can really, show how great this guy is. And it hurts the league from the perspective you really can't promote one of your best players, one of your best international players. And, but for me, I guess the thing for me that I struggle from, and this is me coming from, being with the team every day and doing this for a long time of covering a lot of different things is, and different sports are different ways. Like, being in the Rays locker room, baseball, the access to it is remarkable. You're in there, you're entrenched, you walk to a guy, you can, shoot it with him for, talking about nothing about baseball for a good 20 minutes, and, you have that access. The NFL is different, right? You have, very stationed kind of media access and stuff like that. Hockey is the dynamic of hockey and the structure of it should be kind of in between there, but with certain guys, it's not. So, but having said that, I do think that, like, my frustrating part is, there's sometimes when I get told is, well, you don't have to talk to the guy to write stories about him. Right. And that's true to an extent. Like, and we are lucky in the fact that everyone in that room loves Nikita Kucherov to the fact that they talk glowingly about him and tell you great stories about him.
Right.
But if you can't really get in the mind of one of the best minds in hockey, it's a disservice to everyone. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a disservice to the game. It's a disservice to, the people who cover the team. It's a disservice to the fans, and I just wish he would open up a little bit more on stuff like that, because the best part of Nikita Kucherov is the way he thinks the game. Right. And if you can't really tap into that, I'm not asking him to, like, tell us all the secrets, and I know we've asked questions sometimes where we ask him about what he's thinking. He's like, I'm not going to tell you. Right. Yeah. and stuff like that. But, like, he is one of the greats, and, he is one of the greats in that room. And I just wish that we were able to kind of tap into him a little bit more and just get to know him a little bit better. And obviously I joined the beat at a time where it was right around COVID, and, our access was completely, like, taken away because of COVID. Right. And it's kind of slowly come back. And I think that's also another aspect of it, is that athletes in general, whether it's, baseball opened up a little bit quicker than most, but hockey was probably one of the later ones to open up in terms of regaining that access that we had pre-COVID, is I think that sometimes athletes have used that to, that they didn't have to talk to us now as almost a crux that, right. Okay, well, over that span, we didn't really have to interact, but, and like I said, this is taking nothing away from Nikita Kucherov as a player, as a person, anything like that. I just wish that we were really able to it would be better for everyone, mm-hmm. and my covering the team, to be able to talk to him more and him be a little bit more open about, the way he thinks the game, the way he sees the game, him being able to talk about some of his teammates, stuff like that. And especially, and this is an important part, is that he wears an A on his jersey now. And, I don't know if I haven't encountered an athlete like him in general, but also haven't encountered an athlete who has that kind of leadership, put on him in the room, who doesn't talk. Like, right. we do have a great group of emerging leaders in that room. And I talk about them all the time: Braden Hagel, Nick Paul, Anthony Cirelli. Those guys are great. And one day those guys will regularly wear letters too. But, as in covering this team, we did lose a great voice in Steven Stamkos. Yeah. And Victor Hedman is good. And they have getting Ryan McDonough back is great. But there are some nights when you go into that room and you're like, who do I talk to? Because you've talked to Victor Hedman a bunch. You've talked to Ryan McDonough a bunch. You've talked to Hagel a bunch, and, it would be nice to be able to go up to 86 and have him cooperate a little bit more on what, on talking about the team.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And I think it's well said. And you put it in a really good, respectful way of, like, we're not bashing the guy. And it'd be one thing if, like, somebody wrote a scathing article about him and he's like, screw you guys, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Then he'd be like, cause effect, right? Like, you're like, all right, well, that's the way it goes. But
and that's the thing. Like if he was in Toronto or in New York or Boston or anything like that,
hate it.
Like our media market is so much different. I'll be the first one to say that. Is it? But having said that, like, I don't think anyone's ripped him to a point that he shouldn't talk or anything like that. And like I think the other day when we requested him, there was the 600th 600 assists, right? And so if you can't get him to talk on a night like that, after they win, he has this great, tremendous highlight reel goal that was is going to be played over again for months, and he hits this thing, and all you can get him to really say is cool about it.
Yeah,
like, that's, I don't know, I could say a lot more, but that's It's frustrating. That's all I can say.
You did a good job, man.
Yeah.
And I think you're the consummate professional for sure, being able to deal with it the way you do. Real quick, because we're up against it, I want to hear about the Baseball Hall of Fame. You covered baseball for so long. I had 4 guys. The only guy that I didn't have that didn't get selected was Omar Vizquel. That was my 4th. You don't still vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame, do you?
I do.
Oh, you do? Nice. What was you didn't make it public, did you?
I did. So
did you? You're the guy that didn't vote for each row. You
Times
son of a gun.
Usually the Times runs it. They didn't run it, but this year, but the guys who do the tracker, Ryan Thibodeau and those guys who do the Hall of Fame tracker, they asked me for it. So they're on Blue Sky. So it's on Blue Sky somewhere on there. I think I retweeted it through my account, but basically I voted for the 3 guys who got in. To me, like, Wagner last year, he kept on trending.
Right.
Ichiro, no doubt. CC to me wasn't a doubt. I also voted for Andrew Jones. I think that he definitely deserves to be in there. When you combined his all around play, and who else I vote for? I went back and forth on Rollins and Utley, but I voted for both of them.
Yeah.
And the other 7th one was
Beltran.
I did not vote for Beltran.
Ay, Dios mío, no Beltran.
I don't feel good about the trash can thing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But
feel good about it. All right, we'll let everybody know. We'll check it up on Blue Sky.
But yeah, it's on Blue Sky. Eddie in the Yard at Blue Sky, if you want to check it out.
Go check them out. What else you got going on right now for TampaBay.com? Everybody with the Tampa Bay Times. We had Mark Topkin on yesterday. We know that there's a game. No, they got morning practice today, but games back-to-back Friday and Saturday. Let us know what they can read there on Tampa Bay Times, TampaBay.com.
Yes, I mean, we talked about a little bit, but kind of looking at where they kind of sit right now. It's actually kind of a familiar place where they were last January in terms of really a lot of teams surging at them in the playoff standings, and they're really gonna have to kind of have the sense of urgency, and they did last year. I think in the second half of the year, I think they were 26-12-2 or something like that, so they had one of the best records in the league. They're gonna have to do something like that pretty I think over the course of this stretch, which looks pretty ominous, but especially because I think out of 36 games, I think 15 of them are against Atlantic Division teams. So you got a few against Buffalo there, but Buffalo, even though Buffalo's been bad, there's no way a gimme. So some games against Ottawa, some games against Montreal, I think. I think they only have one more against Toronto, I think. But when we look at the way they've played against the Atlantic Division, like we said, they've got to get better. And just kind of taking a look at a little bit of the numbers game there of what they kind of face moving forward as we go into this back-to-back and kind of rounding out this really crazy month that they've had, which is 16 games in 29 days, including 10 on the road, 4 road back-to-back. So the schedule hasn't been friendly to them. They haven't used it as an excuse, but obviously they've got to start winning games on the road, and they just got to start piling the points. So kind of look at a little bit into that. And then obviously we've got this back-to-back, so I'll be there with datelines on from Chicago and Detroit. So
that's going to be great. Shannon just texted me. Felix Hernandez was the other guy.
Felix. Oh, that's right. King Felix.
King
that's
Felix.
Right.
What a beast.
Oh my God. That guy was awesome. I love covering him too. I mean, like,
yeah, his numbers weren't, all time, like when you look at like the numbers, I don't think they tell the kind of career that he had.
Right.
But he was just dominant and he had a lot of swag.
And sometimes like that too, you look at like, how much a guy means to like a team too, and a market.
He was the Mariners. Yep.
And he was like that team for a good amount of time.
That's a great.
Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate it.
You go, Shannon. Shannon's all-star performer today on the program. Make sure you check out Ed and the entire crew, Tampa Bay Times. Go subscribe today, man. And we support local here on the Jay Recher podcast. And everybody, we've had pretty much everybody except Stroud. We got to get Rick's the last guy. We've had Joey. Well, we got to get Romano too. I want to get Romano too. We got
Stroud's elusive. He's elusive.
He is elusive. He's just. I got to get him on. He said he would, so I got to get him on. But we've had Joey Knight and Mark Topkin and Ed Encina, who joins us every Thursday here at 1:30. And again, I really wanted to, for everybody that's been asking about the Nikita Kucherov thing and the stash, our guy, Ed, you're the consummate professional in what you do. Both you and Gabby are, and I've always wondered what it's like being around number 86 and his attitude towards the press in general. Yes, and that's the reason why, for all those watching, that's the reason why I wanted to bring that up to the guy that covers the team every day and also the Lightning team reporter. And it's a fragile thing. Like these two people that I've asked these questions to, they're my friends, and I don't want to put them in a position where they feel cornered or they have to say a certain thing. But I also think there's also another side of this where the fans and also the people that watch hockey need to understand, like, we're not the bad guys in this situation. We're not saying Nikita Kucherov is a bad guy in this situation. We're just trying to do our jobs. And it is fun and it is funny to kind of chuckle about when he has these one word answers and number one bullshit and stuff like that. But we also are trying to do our jobs. And I don't think anybody in the Tampa Bay area, Eric Erlinson and everybody else that we've had on our show included, like, nobody's trying to paint Cooch into a corner. Nobody's trying to make him look bad. We're just trying to do our jobs. And I just want to make sure that we articulate that and stand up for ourselves too, to be like, hey, we're doing it in the right way. Nobody's ever said anything from the Lightning like, you guys need to do this, you need to do that. So any of that misconception that we ever try to bully him is also like well off base too. So Ed, Eric, Gabby, the entire crew, consummate professionals, and esteemed colleagues that I very privileged to call friends. So Ed, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much. Safe travels up to the Midwest area up there. And we'll talk to you again next week, brother. Safe travels.
Anytime, Jay. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, man.
You got it. And thanks Shannon too. She's the all-star today. She's the Hall of Famer. She should get your other vote. Thanks, buddy.
She's down the ballot yet. But
yeah, she will be. She will be. Nobody's gonna kick Shannon Encina off the ballot, man. She put her on there for 12 years. We're getting her on there. But yeah, again, it's important. I know a lot of people have asked ever since that I came out with my comments on Monday about covering Nikita Kucherov. So it's important to ask the people that cover him because it's such a unique situation. And with Gabby, who's been covering the team for 4 years, and she used to work for Channel 8 before then, and Ed, who's covered multiple sports, and she's been all over the country covering different sports. It's important that you guys know this kind of stuff too. And that's the kind of conversations that we're going to have here on the Jay Recher podcast. Like, it's not just going to be the fluff, and we're not going to, we're not just going to talk about things that are important. I think things like that are important because I've had experiences with Nikita Kucherov in Toronto and in South Florida at All-Star games where he was a lot more loquacious and a lot more talkative with me. And he just doesn't like it. That's not his thing. It's not his native tongue. He doesn't see the point of it. He's just focusing on making sure that his team wins. And we get that. But there's also, it's going to hurt you in some areas. I was in Toronto for the All-Star game last year when everybody was telling me that Nikita Kucherov was not going to get voted for because, like, part of the reason why is that they don't really know about him, and it was Nathan McKinnon's turn. Well, if he was a little bit more of a belle of the ball and a little bit, kinder to the microphone, maybe that sways some people. But just think about what I just said. At the All-Star game last year, people were voting for Nathan McKinnon. The season wasn't even over yet. And if you went back and forth and you looked at how many points and what percentage of points for his team, just go back and look at some of those statistics. Take out the narratives. Nikita Kucherov was clearly the MVP last year. Look at what that Lightning team would have done. And you didn't have Andrei Vasilevsky for the first 20 games last year. Like, that narrative was written in stone before the season was over. Would that have changed if Nikita Kucherov had a little bit of a, if he was a little bit more, the relationship is a little bit better with the media, not just here locally, but around the country? Maybe. I'm inclined to say yes, but there's no guarantee. There's no way to know that. But it certainly doesn't help. we don't know how much it would have helped, but it certainly doesn't help when you don't have that type of relationship. Again, he's an enigma. He's a guy that is so fun to watch. But it is like it's definitely something unlike any of us that have covered the team has ever had to deal with before when you're going with a guy like Nikita Kucherov. So really, really good stuff from our guy, Ed Encina. We got Jake Asman joining us on the program here in a second. I'm just going to make sure he is ready for you because I want to ask Jake about Aaron Glenn, about Aaron Rodgers, the New York Jets. Such a big story around the National Football League with Aaron Glenn leaving the Detroit Lions, no longer their defensive coordinator. And here you go, some other news. Casey Rodgers, Bucs run game coordinator and defensive line coach, expected to join the Lions as their defensive line coach, replacing Terrell Williams, who became the DC of the New England Patriots. So again, we've gone back and forth when it comes to Casey Rodgers, a guy that has been so tight with Todd Bowles over the years. Yeah, I think they need some fresh faces. I do. And there's a really good, and listen, we're not all going to agree, right? We're not all going to agree. This guy should go. This guy, like, that's just human being. It's human nature. It's part of being American. We're all listening and thinking about different things. And I know our guy, Matt Matera, who we've had on the program before, pewterreport.com, he says out of all the coaches that need to go, that's the one that needs to stay. And I can totally see where he's coming from, because that is a position of strength when it comes to the players on the team. But if you're going to make a change, if you're Todd Bowles and you're going to change up your coaching staff, sometimes you need a breath of fresh air in different spots. I don't look at that position and go, wow, they were really coached up well. I mean, they're high draft picks. Vita Vea was a first rounder. Kalaji Kansey was a first rounder. Logan Hall was a number 33 overall pick, technically a second round pick. But a guy that, if he would have went late in the first round, I think a lot of people would have batted an eye. We're talking about a guy coaching and developing and stuff like that. Like, I don't know how much coaching had to do with the success of those players. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think there needs to be more guys that Todd Bowles really needs to look at and go, all right, well, can we make a change here? Can we make a switch here? Because that defense has to be better. It's got to be new coaches. It's got to be new players. We know the scheme is when everybody's firing on all cylinders. Listen, this is a team that's really tough to play against. And they have really confused and really messed up some of the best offenses in football. We've seen that. But when you don't have all the horses, you're going to be in trouble. It's just a fact. And one thing that Todd Bowles, and not just Todd Bowles, but one thing that Jason Light needs to focus on is depth on the defensive side of the ball. The depth on the defensive side of the ball was shallow this year. It really was, because when guys went down, you felt it. Certain teams, when you have injuries, like other guys step up. I said it with Philly, and of course, it happens primarily with the teams that are there at the end. But if you're the Bucs, that's what you're trying to be. If you're the Bucs, you're trying to be one of the teams that is the last one standing every single year. The majority of the teams are home, and the Buccaneers are still playing. But in order for you to be able to take that next step, in order for you to be able to be one of those teams that can win a Super Bowl, you have to have depth. You have to have guys that can step up in case somebody goes down. Remember, Alex Kappa went down before the Super Bowl, broke his leg. Aaron Stinney stepped up. Kansas City Chiefs, they had some injuries, and the guys try to step up, but they lacked depth on the offensive line. It really hurt them, and that's part of the reason why the Buccaneers were so successful and why they were able to come away and win their second Super Bowl in franchise history. They have some good depth on the offensive side of the ball. When you lose a guy that goes down with injury, remember, Justin School stepped in. Remember when Luke Easterling was banged up and Tristan Wirfs was banged up? Did a decent job. You remember that. Rashad White goes down. Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker step up. That game against New Orleans, we don't forget that. You lose Chris Godwin, you lose Mike Evans. This team is still able to kind of hold the fort down and be successful even without their two top guys on the outside. But you didn't see that on the defensive side of the football. And I don't think that is a direct kind of strike against Todd Bowles. People are like, oh, you should be able to step up and do things. I mean, if the roster is shallow, the roster is shallow. You're already struggling to find a pass rush on the outside. If one of those guys goes down, like, you're not dealing from a position of strength or a position of success. You're dealing from a position where you're struggling as it is. Linebacker position. We knew KJ Britt was going to get that opportunity, but by the end of the season, was anybody else comfortable that he was a starter? When he came back from injury, nobody was like, wow, glad he's back. And it's not because he's not a great guy, because he's awesome. Love KJ Britt. Got to speak to him before the season. But it's about production on Sundays. Same thing in the secondary, right? What happened with the secondary this year? Well, when you're dealing with a guy like Jamel Dean, who's been having issues, and when you're dealing with some of the other safeties, right? Like Jordan Whitehead didn't have the greatest year. Antoine Winfield Jr. didn't have the greatest year. So it's one thing to have depth, but it's also, you want to have depth and you want to have good players as your depth. So I think new voices in the room when it comes to the coaches. I think when it's new players overall, like, that's what this Buccaneers team needs. Luke Easterling, who joined us from Athlon Sports earlier on the show, he was speaking about how the Buccaneers could return their entire offense next year. Think about that. Think about how rare that is. May not be rare here because you remember when the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl in 2020, Shaq Barrett and Chris Godwin, people said, good is gone. Both of those guys, good as gone. What did Jason Light and crew do? All 22 starters from the Super Bowl came back. All 11 guys on offense, all 11 guys on defense, all back. Now, we know Alex Kappa moved on, so we can't count him because Aaron Stinnie came back as a backup role, but that is what you have to do to be successful. Retain your players, have some depth. Look at all the draft picks that they used in the secondary over the years, like in the last, say, 6-7 years. With Jamel and Carlton and Zion and Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jordan Whitehead and Mike Edwards and Antoine Winfield Jr. and now Tyke Smith, right? Like, it's a lot of guys in the secondary. And that, again, goes back to the reasoning of where I really want the Buccaneers to make a splash in free agency on the defensive side of the ball. I have no issues with bringing in a guy like James Pierce Jr. from the Tennessee Volunteers. No issue with that at all. But I want him and I want Myles Garrett. I want him. I want Max Crosby. Like, you got to throw numbers at these situations. You got to throw numbers at certain position groups because inevitably some of them are going to go down due to injury. All right, let's bring him in. If there's one person that knows what's going on with the New York Jets, it is our guy, the host of the Jake Asman Show, Jake Asman. What's going on, brother? How are you?
What's up, Jay? Just got off the air myself, man. So it's been crazy since yesterday. New coach, I feel like it's starting to grow on a lot of fans about Aaron Glenn because he played for the team and was considered one of the top guys. So we'll see what happens, but there's definitely a lot more optimism today than there was, I guess, at the end of the season for sure.
I guess my question, Jake, is why is this different than what we saw when Robert Saleh was brought on? Because Saleh, especially going after a guy like, when you're looking at D'Amico Ryans, you're looking at, man, that San Francisco coaching staff and how good they are and the success that they had. How is this different? Like, objectively, I'm looking at this and you're going, all right, you're coming from a similar scenario, a guy respected around the league. He obviously was a really good corner in his day, but I mean, just how is it being portrayed from the Jets and from the fan base of like, hey, this is different, but I guess why is the question.
Yeah, you never know with any first timer. I personally wanted someone with previous head coaching experience over any first timer. Like, I wanted Brian Flores. They didn't even talk to Mike McCarthy, but that was someone that I really wanted the Jets to consider pursuing. So it's similar to Saleh because, once again, it's a first-time coach with a defensive background who, as you said, leader of men, highly respected. But Robert Saleh, it didn't work out, but that doesn't mean the process was wrong hiring him. Like, he was still considered one of the top candidates, and it didn't work. I mean, he was 20-36 as a coach, and we'll see. Maybe he's going to somehow get the Jacksonville job. But when it comes to Glenn, I think it's different because he played. I think it's different because his path to get to where he is a lot different than Saleh. He was a really good corner. He joined the Jets his first 3 years under Pete Carroll and Rich Kotite. They were 10-38, and then Bill Parcells shows up, and they didn't have a losing record. The next 5 years, he was a Jet. Like, the Jets are thought to be like this joke of a franchise. When Aaron Glenn was there, they were a joke and then became a really successful team going to the championship game in 98, 12 wins with Bill Parcells. And then he basically gets to experience what that is like as a coach, going with Dan Campbell from New Orleans to the Lions and watching that Lions team go from one of the worst teams in the league to a team that was a legit Super Bowl contender now the last couple of years. So I think his experiences help him. I think he's not going to be afraid to hold guys accountable and push back and not just be kind of like a player's coach where he tries to be buddy-buddy with the players. The people who he has as references who are speaking highly of him are all legendary coaches in this league, whether it's Parcells or Sean Payton or Belichick, who was the Jets DC when Aaron Glenn was a player under Parcells. There's a lot to like from that, and I think people are just hoping that because he's been here, he knows the owner, he knows the media market, he knows the fans, he is a Jet, he wanted this job, that maybe he could have that kind of effect that you brought up D'Amico Ryans. He came back to Houston, and they've been in the playoffs the last 2 years. I think that's the hope, best case scenario, that Aaron Glenn's ready for this opportunity, and he could do a good job, because if he can't, it's going to be the same old same, where it's just another year of being bad, and then he'll be out of a job in 2 years, and we're doing this all over again.
Speaking of one Aaron to another Aaron, so what does this mean for the future of Aaron Rodgers? Because, man, I was all on board, and maybe because I was looking at it through pewter-colored glasses, I was like, Brady did it. Rodgers can come in here. I think they'll be okay. He gets injured, and then this year was just such a weird up and down where it looked like at times things were working, and then you give up a bunch of points. He throws a pick. You're like, oh my God, what is going on? Aaron Rodgers, 2025. Is he with the Jets or no?
I personally hope he is. I don't know if he will be. I think it's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions that they got to answer there. Like, for one, if you're bringing Aaron Rodgers back, I don't believe it could be at his current contract, because if they keep him for one more year, well, his cap hit is only $23 million this year, which is nothing. Then you pay the piper on that the following year when it's $20 or $63 million in dead cap to release him. And yeah, I mean, the cap goes up every year. You could always maneuver some things, but that's still like a lot for a guy who, I think, fairly speaking, this year was probably around average. Like, there were moments he looked like the old Rodgers. There were moments he was bad, but he wasn't helped by the most drops in the NFL and horrendous coaching and the defense falling apart. Like, I think Aaron Rodgers played at an average level for a lot of this year. I mean, he threw 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, so he's still competent. But is he worth dealing with the dead cap hit of that a year from now? Probably not. I don't know if a new GM would want that. So that's the first thing. And then, he's 41. He brought in Hackett to run that system that he wants to run. You can't do that. So it's like, they're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator. Is Aaron Glenn going to say to Aaron Rodgers, look, we want you, but you got to run the offense that we want you to run, and not this, hey, I'm going to change every play at the line of scrimmage. I'm going to do it my way. Like, that works when you're winning back-to-back MVPs in Green Bay. That doesn't work when the team goes 5-12. And it's not all him, but they got to run a real modern offensive scheme. So I think that's the second part of all this. And then, look, Rodgers hasn't said that he definitely wants to play next year. I personally think he does. When I heard him speak on Pat McAfee's show last week, he didn't sound like a guy who wants to retire, but he still could. We know this is a guy that always likes to kind of toe that line of, am I playing? Am I not? So I feel like if the answer to the first two is he takes the pay cut, which he said he would, they are able to get him the buy-in to a new offensive scheme, which he also said he would learn, and he does want to play, which I do believe he will. I think he's their best option. Like, I think it's easy to say, move off of him. Who are you bringing in? Like, the options out there stink. And I talk to Jet fans every day. Aaron Rodgers threw 28 touchdowns this past year. They have not had a quarterback throw for more than 9 touchdowns in a single season since Sam Darnold in 2019. Like, Zach Wilson threw 23 career touchdown passes with the Jets. Rodgers had 5 more in 1 year. And obviously, the bar is incredibly low because Jet quarterbacks stink in their history for the most part. But, everyone wants to blame Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's the biggest reason why they were 5-12. I still think among the options out there, he's their best chance to win games next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's not like they're in a great spot in the draft. It's not like they have the number 1 overall pick. It's like, oh, you could take one of these guys. So, yeah, I'm with, and there's not, I don't think, a slam dunk home run free agent guy either. Or like, what would you rather have? If you're going to pick up a bridge quarterback anyway, I'd probably want Aaron Rodgers and some of these other guys too. See if those guys can recreate their magic. I'm with you, man. I'm watching some of those games. He didn't look like a world beater, but he also didn't look like a guy where it was like, oh, you got to hang it up. You're that bad. It was just a lot around. And one thing that bothered me was the whole Garrett Wilson situation, where you're looking at a guy that's an all-world talent, comes out of college, and you're like, that dude's going to be a top 5 receiver for the majority of his career. And then he just didn't look happy. The relationship, you could tell, at Rodgers and Devontae Adams, I mean, those guys are tight. It could have been a force, right? It could have been, wow, look at this 2-headed monster. But it just seemed like Garrett Wilson by the end of the season was not too thrilled with his position in that offense. That's got to be a point of concern for the Jets fans. And also, I think the front office are like, all right, what do we do to make sure we get the most out of just an all-world talent?
I agree with you. And, it almost felt like Devontae was being added to be like the 1B to Garrett, the 1A. And it was more like Devontae's the 1, Garrett's the 2. And there needs to be more balance there because Garrett is phenomenal. Now, you look at his stats, he had the best year of his career with Rodgers throwing to him. He scored double the amount of touchdowns he's had in his career. He had 1,100 receiving yards, 100 catches. Like, statistically, Garrett Wilson played great. But there was a noticeable dip in his target volume once Devontae got there. And part of it, I think, is also this offensive scheme stuff I'm talking about. I don't think they have Garrett Wilson running the right routes in his route tree. Like, they never get him in crossers across the field. He's one of the best receivers in the league with the ball in his hands and always fighting for the extra yards and making that first guy miss. And I just feel like they waste a lot of his reps out there with just quick check downs or like just dump offs or quick out routes. And it's like, this guy should be running deep posts. This guy should be running crossers. He's electric with the ball in his hands. And that comes back to coaching being a big issue for this team, because I'm with you. Garrett Wilson, to me, I mean, he has a chance to be one of the best receivers, if not the best, in Jet history if he plays his whole career with the Jets. So they got to get that right because he's too important to not.
Who is it now?
Probably Don Maynard, Hall of
Yeah,
Famer,
yeah.
you know, played with Namath, different era. But when Don Maynard retired, I think he was the all-time yards leader in wide receiver history.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like some of the other guys that I grew up watching there. I mean,
Corbett,
Corbett's got to be in there.
Keyshawn, Altoon, Wesley Walker. They've actually had some pretty good receivers in their history. Yeah,
Altoon. Yeah, I remember the Keyshawn. That was when I was living there. Corbett, because the Long Island guy, man, Hofstra, like that was the perfect dude to have there with the Jets.
Yep.
I want to ask you about Jeff Ulbrich, because now we're going to see him here in the NFC South. Jimmy Lake, 1 year with Atlanta, and Raheem Morris. I am not the biggest Raheem Morris. As a guy, fantastic. As a head coach, I just don't see it. Like, I watched it in Tampa, doesn't make great decisions. He's not great with timeouts either. I didn't see the development. They get rid of him. They bring in Jeff, and I'm like, like I don't know. Like, I don't know if he's that guy where I look at him and go, wow, I'm scared about that Atlanta defense. What should Falcons fans or, and an extension, Buccaneers fans should expect from a defense that's led by him? Because you've seen it with the Jets the last couple of years.
What's fascinating to me about Ulbrich is once he became the head coach, the defense completely fell apart. Now, was that because it was too much for him to handle being head coach and still being the defensive coordinator? Or is that because Robert Saleh had a lot to do with the defensive success? And I had been told for a while that Saleh was way more involved than most people gave him credit for. And we saw that once he got fired. So I don't know. Look, I don't want to say Ulbrich can't be a good DC. I don't know if that's fair to him. He was put in a really tough spot being thrown into the head coaching role, and he wasn't ready for it. But I don't know how good of a DC he is. The first year they were awful with the Jets. Then they got more talent. And then Saleh, I was told by someone I trust, took on a way bigger role in the defense in that second year. And they became a top 5 defense in that second and third year before it all fell apart this year when he got fired. So I think Ulbrich's a good coach. I'm curious to see what it's going to be like now without Saleh's influence there. And he's truly the one calling the shots as the DC in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we'll see him twice a year here. What other big moves? I mean, have you really what big move in the NFL has really caught your eye in the last week or two outside of the Jets?
I think Ben Johnson going to Chicago is intriguing because if he's truly like this offensive genius now as a head coach and he could fix Caleb Williams, like that makes the Bears a factor for the first time in forever if he's actually like able to get Caleb Williams to play like how Jared Goff has played under Ben Johnson. So that's been intriguing to me. I'm fascinated to see what happens with the Cowboys. Like, supposedly Brian Schottenheimer's got the inside track to get that job. That's what year is this? 2025, and Schotty's going to be a head coach after he didn't call plays on a Mike McCarthy staff that offensively wasn't great. I don't know. That's a weird one for Jerry. So I'm fascinated about that. And then we brought up Robert Saleh. It feels like he might have the inside track to be the head coach of the Jaguars, which is nuts. So I'm basically kind of following along this hiring cycle and seeing where everyone ends up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that I was actually putting it out there on Twitter and actually got some steam of how great of a coach Robert Saleh was because I was trying to throw everybody off the scent of Liam Cohen. And it actually, like, there's a lot of people that came up to me like, Robert Saleh's not a good coach. I'm like, he's a great coach, guys. Fantastic. Perfect fit. He's a cat guy. Like, he'd be perfect for Jacksonville. And then it worked. I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but then Liam Cohen stays here making $4.5 million a year, which is pretty nuts for an assistant. I want to ask you about
for them, though. I mean, it better than me watching it, but I mean, to keep him for another year, it feels like Tampa now, like, this is the window. You got to capitalize and go for it. Let me ask you this. Do you think they're keeping him because if they don't achieve whatever goal they have for next year, Bowles could be out and they just promote Cohen and not lose him?
I think that's part of it. I don't think because Todd Bowles has been so, and man, you're a perfect guy to ask this because when Todd Bowles got promoted from the DC, a lot of people are like, I love this. This is a great thing and I'm like, whoa. Half of my family are Jets fans. I watched this thing crumble to the earth, great man, respected around the NFL. But those last couple seasons, it was that stoic Todd Bowles on the sideline, freezing his ass off with a winter hat on, just looking out into the distance. And I was like, I saw that look so many times. We can't have that here in Tampa Bay. And it's so crazy, Jake, how it's flipped. Now I'm one of the people going, bro, he's gotten better every single year. He's not great with time management. There's a lot of coaches, Mike Tomlin, Raheem Morris, Dan Campbell. Like, there's guys that struggle with timeouts and struggle with time management. It's not just Todd Bowles. He's gotten incrementally better. The defense didn't have a lot of talent this year. Antoine Winfield Jr. didn't have a great year. Bunch of injuries. They didn't have nearly the amount of talent on defense that they do on offense. But there's also some semblance of, have they hit a ceiling with Todd Bowles? Mm-hmm. So as you bring that up, like, I think if they took a step back this year, I wouldn't have been surprised if they went in a different direction and elevated Liam Cohen. But this is a huge year in 2025. If the Bucs defense as a team, if the Bucs defense or the team as a whole takes a step back, I wouldn't be surprised if they made that move. Because, Jake, you don't pay an offensive coordinator $4.5 million if you don't see a long-term future with them, right? I mean, it's different. It's Philly did. The reason why it's that amount is because that's what Philly's paying Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio's no spring chicken. He, after many years, finally got the head coaching job out there, and he was like, yeah, okay. It's different, right? It's a Steve Spagnuolo kind of thing where it's like, this guy is an all-time assistant. So, yeah, I'm with you. And I was actually a little surprised that the Jets weren't one of those teams that were looking into Liam Cohen, because he's a Northeast guy, Patriots, fan growing up. I think it was kind of set in stone they were going to Mike Vrabel. But if you're the Jets, and as you alluded to, you need a modern offense. I thought Liam Cohen, coming from that Sean McVay coaching tree out there in LA, would have made a lot of sense. Because now I flip it back to you, like, Aaron Glenn's got to hire an OC. And now in the league, you're hiring an OC. And if he's that good, it's probably not going to be your OC for long. Just look at the Detroit Lions. He knows that, obviously working alongside like Ben Johnson. So, I mean, are there any names out there? Like, are there any links that Aaron Glenn has? Because you're right. Regardless if it's Rodgers or somebody else, you're going to need an innovative play caller to keep up with the Joneses in the NFL.
100%. And to your point on Cohen, they should have requested him. Maybe he turned them down. No one's told me that, but
no, he didn't. The only request that he had was with the Jaguars, which is crazy. No Raiders, no Jets. We got the Bears and the Patriots.
Do you think his agent maybe put it out there? Hey, he's not taking your job if you don't have a quarterback. Like, the Raiders have no quarterback. The Jets have maybe a year of Rodgers. I don't think that's going to get him to uproot his family and take that job necessarily.
I would think that, but you look at the situation with Jacksonville. Like, he had the quarterback there, but he knew as well as everybody else knew that Trent Baalke was still there, and that whole situation up there is untenable to say the least. So I don't think he was in a position where he was like picking spots going, I don't want this, I do want this, I don't want this. I truly believe if the Patriots would have called, that he would have taken that interview. And that's why, but they just, you knew they had their sights set on Vrabel. Like, the Jets were probably like, hey, we loved him, but it just makes sense. Same thing with Aaron Glenn. These guys going back to their old teams, like, that kind of shit makes sense to me. But I was a little shocked that the Jets did not give him a call, because that would have made sense. Because now Aaron Glenn, again, we go back to it, he's going to need an OC regardless of who the quarterback is.
No doubt. And it's going to be a huge hire for him. Some of the names you're hearing are Clint Kubiak, who most recently was with the Saints as a play caller there. He intrigues me. Also, the Rams pass game coordinator and tight end coach. His name is Nick Caley, who turned down Gerard Mayo a year ago to be the Pats OC. He apparently is under consideration as well. Glenn's got to get that hire right. I mean, you're 100% spot on. Like, Aaron Glenn might be an awesome coach, but if he misses on his offensive play caller, it's tough to have any sustainable success. They're going to need to draft a quarterback at some point. I don't know if it's this year, but in all likelihood, 2026 first round, that is a real possibility. And once again, you'd have a defensive-minded coach overseeing the development of a first-round pick at quarterback. And, I went through this with Saleh with Zach Wilson, Todd Bowles with Sam Darnold, Rex with Mark Sanchez. Like, it's just harder to do if you don't nail the OC hire. And that's why Aaron Glenn has to get that right if he's going to be around for the long term and actually turn the Jets around for once.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of looking at some of these guys. I mean, Clint Kubiak was a guy that the Buccaneers were looking at before they settled on Liam Cohen. It's hard to go away. Yeah, you just never know. You're right. I mean, you think these guys are going to be great. I mean, if I'm the Jets, I'm probably Nick Caley's that guy. I mean, it's hard to not go the Sean McVay coaching tree after what you've seen from Kevin O'Connell and Liam Cohen, and just knowing like he is going to understand. And this is why I'm gonna kind of fill you in on this part of it. The one thing that really took a step up this year was the blocking by the tight ends in this Liam Cohen system. And Nick Caley, a tight ends coach for the LA Rams, also the passing game coordinator. Like, this guy was able to develop 3 tight ends where people thought they were one-trick ponies, and they all contributed in a way this year. So that's just kind of a little peek behind the curtain where Nick Caley could make a lot of sense for the Jets. That's the guy I'm hoping for you. Before I let you go, give me your predictions on who you think is going to win this weekend. We got the Chiefs and the Bills. We got the Eagles and the Commanders. Who are you keeping your eye on?
Well, I'm rooting for whoever comes out of the NFC because I can't stand the Chiefs and I hate the Bills even more.
Yes.
So for one more week, I'm rooting for Kansas City and then go NFC. I think Kansas City's going to win, though, until I see someone go into Arrowhead, not named Joe Burrow, and actually beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. I think Kansas City's just going to find a way and get it done. And then in the NFC, I mean, I really want to pick Washington, but I'm leaning Philly right now. I think it's going to be a great game. I really think both these games could be awesome. I'm certainly hoping they are. Washington, though, for those saying, oh, it's a rookie quarterback, they can't do it, their run's going to end. He's not playing like a rookie right now. Like, forget the rookie quarterback stuff. You make it this far with how he's playing, he's not a rookie at this point. He is playing like a legitimate top 5 quarterback in the sport right now. So I think Washington's got a tremendous shot of winning. I'm just going to pick the favorites, though. I'm going Philly and Kansas City.
I'm with you. At Jake Asman, follow him. The Jake Asman Show, one of the best shows around. I always appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work, and talk to you again soon, man.
Jay, appreciate you having me. Continue success. Everyone like the video. Subscribe to this man's channel. Help the algorithm. Let's go, man. Jay's crushing it on YouTube.
Thanks, pal. Oh, and I got your note like last week when I was live. I saw it on the screen. I know you popped in just to send your well wishes. So I appreciate all the guidance and the friendship, my man. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Anytime, my man. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Jay.
All right, buddy. The Jake Asman Show. Anything Jets, Jake's the guy. Go there. He's live like as soon as the news comes out. So go over there and subscribe to his channel because he's doing a lot of great stuff over there. Wow, what a show today. This is the Jay Recher Podcast in a nutshell. When you think about it, we're touching on a little bit of everything: baseball and hockey and football and soccer and teams and Jets and just Gasparilla, everything here on the Jay Recher Podcast. We're keeping it fresh. We're keeping it funky. A big thank you to Luke Easterling from Athlon Sports. Also, Greg Wolf from Street Laced and the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning and USF. Ed Encina from the Tampa Bay Times. And, of course, Jake Asman from the Jake Asman Show. Tomorrow, we've got Chris Russell joining us on the show at 12:10. We know Chris is supposed to join us on, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday, from up there, Team 980 in DC. Pete Medhurst, the voice of Navy Athletics, passed away. That was his old partner, so he unfortunately couldn't join us. He's going to join us tomorrow at 12:10. And then Mark Ogden is going to join us at 1 o'clock tomorrow from across the ponds. Mark Ogden, senior soccer writer for ESPN, on what the heck is going on with Manchester United. They're playing at 3 o'clock today. And also why Manchester United does not play here in the Tampa Bay area. Have you guys read this? Have you heard about this? The Glazer family that owns the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and also a part of Manchester United. Isn't that kind of funky? And myself, right, being a big Manchester United fan, like why don't we see United here in Tampa? We see these other teams. We saw West Ham and Crystal Palace earlier this year. Wouldn't it make sense if United was down here? Well, Mark Ogden has let everybody know that part of the reason why is because the Glazers don't want the Man United players to see the facilities here that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have. It's a very interesting story having to do with our football team. So Mark Ogden, Augie, is going to join us at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Of course, I have more irons in the fire, so hopefully we'll talk some different stuff as well. I'm going to give you my predictions for the conference championship games. Also, we'll speak about the Tampa Bay Lightning as they head to Chicago and Detroit and hopefully get back to their winning ways. No softball talk, Nelly, because the Pendingos rained out. And thank you very much, Lady Evil, for the kind words. Finally, find me everywhere on social media at Jay Recher, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your family members, tell your dentist, tell people that you don't like the Jay Recher Podcast live every day at noon right here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. That's going to do it for me. I'm going to go yell at my TV because Manchester United is about to be on at 3 o'clock. I love you. I appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow at noon right here on the Jay Recher Podcast. I am gone.